One night, in an old and abandoned factory, a few people tied the protagonist, Jiang Shoyam, over a cage full of zombies. A woman standing outside the group called out to Jiang, telling him that all of his friends were dead, so there was no point in him living anymore. Jiang believed it was all his fault, that he was responsible for what had happened to them all. He shouted at her, vowing that she would surely die a horrible death. She tightly gripped the hand of a man beside her, claiming that Jiang was being cruel to her again. The man suggested they slowly torture him to death to give her some satisfaction, but reminded her that it was thanks to his supplies that they could live freely for a few more months. Then he pressed a button, causing Jiang to fall into the cage, where the zombies immediately rushed to attack him. As Jiang was being killed, he thought that if he were to be reborn, he would make those responsible pay the price. To his surprise, he woke up to Kui Jing asking him what he meant by that and why her name hadn't been added to the property deed yet. She also asked if he even loved her. Confused, Jiang wondered what was happening. Could it be that he had been reborn to a time before the apocalypse? In his past life, he had been tricked by her, losing all of his parents' inheritance and ending up on the streets. Then, the global catastrophe struck. Most humans turned into zombies, and the world fell into chaos. He had relied on the friends he made while wandering to build a safe zone and survive the apocalypse. However, he never expected that Jing would pretend to be a desperate person seeking refuge, trying to earn his sympathy. In reality, she was bait sent by the enemy to destroy them. Jing mentioned the 400,000 dowry, not a penny less. When Jiang didn't respond, she asked if he was even listening. He felt his anger rising but reminded himself that he couldn't act impulsively. As she was about to continue, saying she would give him a week, he shoved her out of the room, telling her it was fine and that she should leave. As he slammed the door, Jing stood there, shocked, wondering if this was really the Jiang she knew. Wasn't he supposed to be her lapdog? Jiang glanced at the date and time, realizing there was only a month left. He needed to start preparing immediately for the apocalypse. Suddenly, a system task window appeared before him, activated, with the task related to preparing for the apocalypse. He read through it, wondering about the task rewards and what they could do. He discovered that there was a store in the system where he could use the points to buy items. He remembered that in his previous life, when he was gathering the dowry for Jing, he lived frugally every day, which led to malnutrition. Now, he took his phone to order food, thinking that in a month, zombies would be everywhere, so it was better to eat well while he still could. That night, he ordered a lot of delicious food, wondering if it was the legendary Michelin 3-star expensive takeout. He decided to indulge in the 300 yuan braided pork. After taking a bite, he found it to be absolutely delicious. Then, he started eating like a maniac, when he was suddenly disturbed by a call from Jing's friend, Wen Shuya. He wondered if Jing had gone to her friend, crying. When he answered the call, Shuya shouted at him, asking how he could treat Jing like that. She insisted that he show her love, but he had failed to do so. Now, Shuya offered him 1 million yuan in cash to apologize, promising to help him so that Jing wouldn't break up with him. Jiang angrily shouted at her, asking if they were testing him, and told her to get lost. He ended the call and sat there, thinking about owning a piece of land. He wanted to build the most solid fortress on that land, one that was not only easy to defend but hard to attack, and also close to water and the forest. The next morning, he went to a company where Xiaoming greeted him and asked if he was there to rent a house or buy one. As Jiang was about to say something, manager Zhu walked by, telling Xiaoning to hurry up and help move the boxes because a large shipment of paper had arrived that day. She mentioned she was about to attend to a client. Zhu pushed her aside, asking if she had forgotten what he had taught her and why she was ignoring him. Then, he turned toward Jiang and remarked that Jiang was dressed in cheap clothes from Pindu Duo, probably couldn't even afford a toilet, so what kind of client could he possibly be? Jiang wondered what he was talking about and if he was being looked down upon. Manager Zhu arrogantly confirmed that he was indeed looking down on Jiang. And with Jiang's status, if he could even afford a toilet, Zhu would eat his own shit. Upon hearing this, Jiang suggested that Manager Zhu just find some fresh air, then showed a card, telling them he was there to buy land. They were all shocked by his statement, and the other staff members wondered if he had gone crazy. It was the first time they had ever heard someone talk about buying land, which made it clear that he was quite wealthy. Xiaoning asked him to follow her, promising to give him a detailed introduction to the options available. As they were walking, Zhu said that he still couldn't believe Jiang could afford such an amount. Jiang took a seat, and Ning handed him a file mentioning that these were the available pieces of land. As she explained, Jiang told her there was no need for a detailed rundown. He just needed to see if any land matched his requirements. He then listed his conditions. It needed to be near the mountains and water, with convenient transportation, and have space for large buildings or factories. While Ning was thinking, Zhu chimed in, suggesting a piece of land in the East District that met Jiang's requirements. Ning wondered if he was referring to the Tea City land, but she mentioned that the factories there were unfinished and the land wasn't available for sale to clients. Zhu sarcastically added that Jiang was probably just wasting their time and causing trouble. Jiang asked if the land in the East District really met all his requirements. Ning confirmed, but added that the factories were unfinished because the construction team leader had run away. Jiang took a look and said that the land indeed met his requirements. He planned to install barbed wire to make it easier to defend. And since it was unfinished, it would also save him both cost and time. He agreed to buy the land and asked for the contract and payment details. At first, Ning apologized, thinking he wasn't actually going to buy. She was surprised by his decision and asked if he was truly going to purchase that unfinished land. Jiang confirmed and urged her to hurry up, joking that someone was waiting to eat some fresh poop. As Jiang made the 300,000 yuan down payment, she was shocked to see someone paying millions for unfinished land. He still couldn't believe it. Jiang placed his hand on Zhu's shoulder and told him that now it was his turn. As long as Zhu was going to enjoy it, Jiang would send him a super chat later. One man took out his phone to start a live stream, and another was ready to provide the fresh content. Meanwhile, Jiang's system prompted him with a mission to prepare for the apocalypse. He thought to himself that he now needed to find a way to gather enough money to stockpile supplies. As he walked by, a man shot him an angry look, wondering why he was there. He then noticed staff inside forcing manager Zhu to lie down. The man shouted, demanding to know what they were doing. The scene shifted to Jing, who received a call from Li Shishan. Jing picked up the phone, asking if he still remembered her. Shu asked if she knew that Jiang had come to buy land. She was shocked and wondered where Jiang had gotten the money. Shu replied that Jiang had made a 300,000 yuan down payment, which he probably saved from the bride price. Jing grew angry upon hearing this, and Shu urged her not to get mad, suggesting that she should ask Jiang what was going on. Jing, fuming with anger, vowed to expose him online for sure. Meanwhile, Jiang sat in his room, thinking about how to gather the money to buy supplies and build a base. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door. When he opened it, he saw Jing standing there, accompanied by a girl whom Jiang also knew. Jing, furious, accused him of daring to spend her money like that. Jiang was confused, wondering what she was talking about. Jing pointed at him, claiming she knew he had used her bridal money to buy land. She insisted that since it was her money, the land now belonged to her. Jiang was taken aback and wondered if she had gone insane. He then took a bundle of money and hit her shoulder with it, saying that he had plenty of money but wouldn't spend a single cent on her. He also mentioned that he knew about her affair with Shu. Jing was shocked and asked how he knew about that. As he pushed her out of the house, the girl stepped forward and asked them both to calm down, claiming that it was just a misunderstanding between the couple. Jiang replied that there was no misunderstanding and Jing was Shu's girlfriend, not his. He told her to get lost, as he was annoyed to see her, and then slammed the door shut. Jing wondered how Jiang knew everything, especially since they had been so discreet about booking the rooms. They both took the elevator down, and the girl mentioned that this was a serious issue. She asked if Jing was really involved with Shu. Jing responded that they had only booked rooms a few times. The girl suggested that they go back, as the situation was bad, and they needed to come up with a plan. Jing agreed, saying it was the only thing they could do. As they left, the girl thought to herself that since Jing had messed everything up, she wasn't going to miss the chance to take advantage of Jiang. The next day, Jiang was at the plot of land, surrounded by construction workers, wondering how long it would take to complete. The foreman, Li, from Parter Construction Company, outlined the tasks that needed to be done. Then, he asked which force Jiang had offended. Jiang told him not to ask too many questions and to just tell him how much time it would take to finish. Li replied that it would take at least a month, to which Jiang said there were plenty of others who could do it faster. Li, with a concerned look, stated that Parter's workers mattered as well. Jiang couldn't help but wonder if Li actually had a conscience for a foreman. As Li mentioned that completing the work within a month would cost more, Jiang asked him to state the price. Li explained that to finish the project within the month, they would have to work at an intense pace. Jiang raised his fingers and asked if it would cost 20 million. Li confirmed, adding that they would need a 5 million yuan deposit to start the work. Jiang agreed to pay them within a week and assured Li not to worry. He told him that if he didn't pay, the land would be theirs. With that, Li reluctantly agreed. Just then, the girl from the previous day arrived. Calling Jiang's name as she approached, she grabbed his hand, asking what he was doing there. He was annoyed by the thought that she, along with Jing, had scammed his family in a past life. Now, it was his turn to get revenge. He asked what she was doing there. She mentioned that the land he had bought was quite large and asked if he planned to build a villa. He pushed her away, stating that it was none of her business. She was shocked and wondered why he was acting so differently from before, especially when he had blushed whenever she touched him. As the workers were measuring the gate's size, Jiang told them it needed to be expanded. The girl became angry, thinking that she shouldn't miss this opportunity. Since Jing wasn't around, the land might eventually belong to her. Later, Jiang sat at home, pondering that pawning his house would only fetch him 3 million, which wasn't enough for the down payment on construction. He then considered that the apocalypse was imminent, so it might not be a problem if he sold the house to multiple people. As he made up his mind, an old man knocked on his door, waking him up. He got up, thinking that the old man had some money and owned the first and second floors of the building. He even wanted to buy the third floor, but Jiang refused to sell it, as he planned to use it for his future marriage. The old man had tried many tricks to pressure him, but nothing had worked. The old man shouted at him, accusing Jiang of going clubbing again the previous night. Jiang raised his voice, replying that he had gone to bed by 10 p.m. The man insisted that he had heard everything from his own house. Jiang told him that if the man had his eye on Jiang's house, he was willing to sell it. The man asked if that was for real. Jiang explained that there would be a condition. The man couldn't leave the house for 6 months, and he would need to pay Jiang 5 million, which would cover the mortgage for his new house. As the man hesitated, Jiang started to close the gate. The man stopped him, saying that Jiang would have to sign a contract. Jiang agreed. He thought to himself that the old man must be eager to die in his own home. The man gave him the 5 million and mentioned the loan would be 3 million, totaling 8 million. Jiang completed the system task and claimed his reward. Next, he went to the supermarket to collect provisions for the year. As he filled his cart, others watched in surprise, wondering if he was mentally unstable. They kept their distance, speculating whether he was another fool who believed in doomsday rumors. Jiang checked his attribute points and decided there was no need to hesitate. He grabbed the first opportunity and chose the protagonist's supply box. He bought the box from the system store and received a ring, thinking that the first drop was always golden. Jiang wondered about the time standing still inside the space, meaning that even if he stored fresh food, it wouldn't spoil. Then, he received another mission to collect sustenance for 10 years. Yang Tao arrived with 2 bodyguards, asking who was causing trouble. As he looked at Jiang, he recognized him. Jiang recognized Yang as his high school classmate, the bad boy who used to bully the weaker students. They had many conflicts back in school, and Jiang never expected to run into him here. Yang pointed at Jiang and ordered him to put the items back in their place, warning that it would be bad if he didn't. Jiang remarked that Yang was still the same as in the past and asked if that was how he treated customers. Yang shouted at him to pay for the items, warning that it would be worse if he didn't. An hour later, the bill was ready, and Yang asked the lady how much it was. She replied that it was 56,833. Annoyed, Yang handed Jiang the card machine, ordering him to pay. In his own frustration, Jiang swiped the card and paid the bill, shocking Yang. He then turned to leave, but Jiang called out to him. Yang turned around and asked what he wanted. Jiang calmly said that Yang's master should apologize to him, or else he would return all the goods. Yang, typing on his phone, asked if Jiang was looking for trouble. Other customers in the supermarket sided with Jiang, telling Yang that he must apologize and that they wouldn't let him off so easily. One man even took out his phone to record, saying he would make Yang famous. Jiang told Yang to apologize, and in return, he would buy 10 times as much. Yang was shocked. Jiang then asked for the card machine, saying he would show just how much money he had. As he swiped his card, Yang was stunned to see a balance of 700,000 yuan. Jiang repeated his demand, apologize, and he would keep buying, reluctantly. Yang agreed and vowed to apologize. Jiang placed a hand on Yang's head, warning him not to be so reckless in the future. Yang then asked what else Jiang was planning to buy, but Jiang simply replied that it was none of his business. He had bigger plans. Hearing this, Yang suggested that he look for a wholesaler, as the supermarket wouldn't have enough supplies for such a large purchase. Jiang asked about a wholesaler, and Yang mentioned Sheng Shi, who was currently in the wholesale business. Yang then called Sheng, telling him that he had found a client. Jiang couldn't help but wonder, Yang and Sheng were still working together? Just how much had they earned from this business? Yang took Jiang to the wholesale supplier, but just as they arrived, a car sped toward them recklessly, nearly hitting Yang but stopping just in time. Sheng stepped out, cigarette in hand, and asked Yang if this was the client. Yang nodded and introduced Jiang as their old classmate. Sheng smirked, recalling Jiang as the one with a bit of backbone. Sheng judged Jiang by his fake designer brand clothes, assuming he wasn't wealthy. Jiang casually replied that he had randomly picked the outfit from a doll. Annoyed, Sheng turned to Yang, questioning whether Jiang was really an important client and accusing him of wasting his time. However, Yang stood by his claim, insisting that Jiang was indeed significant. Sheng scoffed, confidently stating that, after years in business, he'd easily tell who was rich and who was not just by their appearance. Jiang smirked and remarked that it seemed Sheng's so-called instincts weren't working since he couldn't even intimidate those he looked down upon. Enraged, Sheng grabbed Jiang by the collar and demanded to know how he dared to call him illiterate. Jiang calmly responded that it was simply the truth. Yang hurriedly warned Jiang not to provoke Sheng, explaining that while Sheng indeed had that kind of attitude, being called illiterate was the one thing he couldn't tolerate. Furious, Sheng kicked Yang to silence him before turning back to Jiang. He then declared that if Jiang wasn't going to purchase a truckload of goods, he would leave. In response, Jiang told him to let go and check his account. A moment later, Sheng was stunned to see a transfer of 1 million in his account. Jiang then added that he planned to buy goods worth 5 million and would pay the remaining amount once the goods were ready for shipment. As Sheng asked what kind of items Jiang wanted, Jiang mentioned everyday edible and drinkable goods. Sheng told him to follow him, thinking he was lucky to have a customer like Jiang after just getting a batch of nearly expired food. He showed Jiang a selection, boasting that he would even give a 10% discount off the wholesale price if Jiang bought everything. Jiang, however, responded that he would only buy based on the quality. After inspecting the goods, he found that only the packaging was new, while everything inside was expired. Sheng then offered a 50% discount. Jiang, unfazed, mentioned that he had other plans but decided to take everything at the 50% price, agreeing to pay after a month. Sheng wondered what would happen if Jiang didn't pay, but Jiang assured him that he would mortgage his house if needed. Curious, Sheng asked why Jiang was buying such expired goods. Jiang replied that these items would become valuable in a few days and then provided the delivery address. Just then, Jiang received a call from someone asking if he was selling his house. He left the food transaction to Sheng and started to leave. Sheng, still puzzled, wondered how Jiang could be so confident, especially since his family seemed so ordinary. Later, Jiang met an old man who handed over a deposit of 400,000, agreeing to live in the house for 3 months under the condition that a contract be signed. The old man then shared his problem, explaining that his granddaughter had to transfer schools, which was why they were in such a hurry. Jiang, curious, asked what would happen if he raised the price. The old man begged him not to do so, and Jiang, with a nod, agreed and signed the contract. Grateful, the old man bowed and was about to leave, but Jiang stopped him, asking for his address. He explained that the old man and his family seemed kind, but they might not survive in the coming apocalypse. Afterward, Jiang left for the construction site where Li mentioned the second fund. Jiang agreed to provide the funds and asked about the progress of the work. Li updated him, saying the warehouse was ready for use. Jiang called Sheng to bring the goods, and when they arrived, the workers began unloading and organizing everything in the warehouse. They were even paid fairly for the work. Jiang directed them on where to stock the supplies. Once the task was complete, Jiang's mission to collect supplies for the next 10 years was finished. While going through the store box, he discovered a new item and felt incredibly lucky to gain such an ability before the apocalypse hit. The item was the Mind's Eye, a tool that would detect hostility, an invaluable asset, especially in the early stages of the apocalypse, which is exactly what Jiang had hoped for. Late at night in the black market, Jiang watched as Shushong argued with the seller over the price of a bracelet. Jiang quickly realized that the bracelets were fake, and Shushong was falling for the scam. Jiang, uninterested in the jewelry, asked the seller if he had anything harder to offer. The man showed him some weapons and asked him to pick one, but Jiang insisted on something more powerful. Growing frustrated, the man reluctantly asked Jiang to transfer 200,000 yuan to his account before he would show him anything else. Jiang complied, transferring the money, and asked the seller to now show him the hardest weapon. The man, seeing Jiang's seriousness, called another associate to watch over the situation and then led Jiang to a private store where he showcased homemade guns. Despite the man's explanations, Jiang remained unimpressed. The seller then pulled out a revolver priced at 5,000 yuan. Jiang took a quick look and replied that it was barely acceptable. He reminded the man that he had already transferred 200,000 yuan and expected better. Surprised by the payment, the man asked for an explanation. Jiang revealed that the 200,000 yuan was just a 10% deposit, as he planned to buy weapons worth 2 million yuan. The man was shocked, wondering why Jiang would come to him for such a large order. Jiang explained that his subordinates used to handle such matters, but there had been some changes. He then told the man not to ask too many questions and to let him handle things his way. The man, sensing the seriousness of the situation, told Jiang to wait and close the curtains, ensuring their conversation remained private. The man then asked Jiang to provide a list of the items he wanted, specifying that the transaction must be completed the day after next, and that Jiang should bring cash. As Jiang was leaving, Shushang appeared, surprised to see him there. He remarked that Jiang had been ignoring Jing and wondered if Jiang was selling everything just to live comfortably. Asking if his family had any heirlooms, Jiang activated his mind's eye skill, which proved to be incredibly useful. He told Shu that he was purchasing fake and second-hand items, specifically for someone like Jing. Shu was taken aback, angered by the remark. The gun seller, noticing the interaction, asked Jiang if he knew Shu. Jiang replied that Shu was his enemy, prompting the man to suggest Jiang leave while they handled Shu. Jiang told them not to kill him, as he had other plans for Shu. A few men moved towards Shu, who stepped back, clearly frightened. They began for a while, and Shu grew furious, especially at Jiang. 2 days later, in the middle of the night, Jiang received the supplies of guns. Among the items, he discovered an extra physical enhancement potion, which was twice as effective as the one available in the store. Without hesitation, he injected the potion, feeling his physical strength increase dramatically. Curious, Jiang checked the system store to maximize the benefits of his newfound strength. Once enhanced, he set out to find a target to test his abilities. He found an iron rod and kicked it with force, easily bending it. The rod then struck the wall. Jiang smirked and said that even bare-handed, he was not to be trifled with, and against early-stage zombies, and he was not afraid at all. Jiang thought to himself that the weapons shouldn't take up much space, so it would be safer to store them in the space ring. He quickly used the ring, reminding himself that the first day of the apocalypse would be the day after next. He wondered if there was anything else he needed to do before then. As he reflected, he remembered the old man who had bought the house for his granddaughter. Jiang mused that, despite the old man's earlier deception, he couldn't ignore the struggles of others. So, he decided to send some of the supplies to them. It would be up to the old man and his family whether they survived long-term, but at least this would serve as repayment for their role in helping fund his apocalypse plan. The next day, Jiang drove to the old man's house, grateful for the GPS that helped him find the location. As he arrived and looked around, the place seemed rather cheap. He headed upstairs, preparing himself for what was to come. Before knocking, he thought it would be better to take out the supplies, as it might be difficult to carry them otherwise. He used the space ring to pull out the supplies and then knocked on the door. The old man answered, starting to mention the rent, but froze in shock when he saw Jiang. He quickly asked what Jiang was doing there. Jiang asked for help moving the supplies inside before anyone noticed, assuring the old man that he would explain everything afterward. As they moved the items inside, Jiang noticed the room was in decent condition. Once they were done, he turned to the old man and asked him to listen carefully to what he had to say. He explained that the supplies would last for 6 months, and the old man should use them wisely. As Jiang was about to continue, his gaze shifted to a photo of the old man and his granddaughter, which made him pause. The old man, sensing Jiang's change in expression, asked why Jiang had brought the supplies since they were planning to leave in a month. Jiang responded with a soft smile, reminding him of Shanshan and asking the old man to confirm if she was the one in the photo. The old man was shocked, as he had never mentioned her name to Jiang. Jiang, however, pressed on, asking where Shanshan was now. The old man replied that she was attending school and that they would be transferring soon once the paperwork was complete. Jiang was reminded of his past life, where Shanshan had confided in him, expressing her regret over how much her grandfather had sacrificed to save her, even to the point of giving his life. At that moment, Jiang made a vow that Shanshan wouldn't have any regrets this time. He turned to the old man and calmly said that he won't move into his house. The old man was shocked and asked why Jiang was backing off. Jiang explained that from the next day, the world would become like hell, and he planned to take the old man and Shanshan to a safer place. He suggested they go pick up Shanshan from her school. The old man was confused and didn't understand Jiang's words. Jiang struggled to explain, then asked if the old man had ever heard of famine, describing how tragic and terrifying life could be during such times. The old man dismissed it, saying nothing like that would happen. Jiang then waved his hand, causing everything in the room to disappear, revealing that he possessed superpowers and could see into the future. He urged the old man to trust him and said they needed to hurry to Shanshan's school if they wanted to survive. They rushed to the school, and Jiang asked about her class and dormitory. At the school, the girl attacked Shanshan, accusing her of being different and wondering why Xiao Cheng liked her. As Shanshan tried to respond, another girl joined in and hit her. The bullying escalated, and the old man, filled with anger, demanded they let Shanshan go. A few men intervened, telling the old man to leave, but this only led to a fight, as one of the boys raised a baseball bat to strike the old man. Jiang intervened, asking was they teaching him to do such things at such a young age. The other two bullies looked at Jiang in surprise, wondering if Shanshan had a brother. Without hesitation, Jiang kicked the first attacker, sending him crashing into the wall. The remaining two exchanged glances and assumed Jiang was just a friend trying to defend her. Determined to take him down together, they rushed at him from both sides. Jiang calmly dodged their attacks, realizing that even his reaction speed had significantly improved. As one of the men lunged at him, he swiftly grabbed him and slammed him to the ground. A second man charged, but Jiang stopped him mid-attack and delivered a sharp kick to his leg, causing him to collapse as well. The girl, now startled, stared at Jiang in shock and asked what he wanted to do, her voice laced with fear. Jiang slapped the second girl and held a knife to her throat. He asked what she were going to do now. Then, with a swift motion, he cut off her hair. The girl, enraged, shouted in anger. Jiang coolly remarked that her long hair was becoming a burden and that she would understand in a few days that the shorter hair might save her life. He turned to Shanshan and said, "Let's go from here." As they left in the car, Shanshan was puzzled and asked why she wasn't going to school anymore. Her grandfather explained that a massive famine was about to strike, and survival had to be their top priority. Shanshan, still unconvinced, remarked that her classmates probably thought they were crazy. She questioned how much Jiang had been scammed now. Although Jiang insisted he was correct, she pointed out that he always claimed the truth when he was scared. Jiang explained that he had foreseen the famine. When Shanshan asked how he knew, he introduced himself formally, explaining he had a special ability to see the future. Shanshan, though skeptical, thanked him for helping her during the fight at school. Jiang reassured her, saying the bullies wouldn't have much time left, and Shanshan wondered what he meant. Jiang said he had exaggerated the situation for her grandfather's sake, but Shanshan still refused to believe that anything like what he described could happen. He replied that it's the apocalypse and urged her to turn on her phone to check the news and short videos. He promised that she would begin to see the signs of the impending disaster. As Shanshan checked the news, she found several reports confirming what Jiang had said. It was as he had expected. The apocalypse was coming. She wondered if it could really be true. Jiang explained that the next day would mark the first day when toxic smog would blanket several provinces, affecting the population. The smog would infiltrate people's bodies, slowly turning them into zombies. Shanshan, now understanding what Jiang meant, was completely shocked by what she was hearing. He reassured her, saying that soon enough, she would witness how drastic it all would become. They were stuck in traffic, and the emergency lane was blocked as well. The old man grew worried, asking what they would do if zombies caught up with them. Jiang calmly assured him that things wouldn't move that fast. However, he did wonder aloud what would happen if there was a small outbreak nearby. Just then, another car came up behind them and collided with Jiang's car. Jiang, furious, was ready to confront the driver. As he began to move his car, the other driver still tried to cut in front of him. The driver, clearly irritated, shouted at Jiang. The old man, anxious, asked Jiang to calm down to avoid getting into trouble. Jiang, however, assured him that he wouldn't mind sending the driver on his way early. Finally, the traffic cleared, and as they prepared to leave, Shanshan noticed another car trying to cut in. Jiang's anger flared up again. The old man, seeing this situation, urged Jiang not to lower himself to the other driver's level. Jiang replied that in the past, he would have let it go, but not anymore. There's no need to tolerate that kind of behavior. He hit the other car to push it back into the side lane. The man in the car got out, furious, and threatened to call the traffic police, demanding surveillance footage and a license plate number. He declared that he would show Jiang that some people were not to be messed with. They arrived at the factory, and as the old man stepped out, he was amazed by the size of the place. Jiang told them to rest, as the next day would be tough. The following morning, while enjoying his tea, Shannon came by and said it had been so long since she had a good sleep, and it was nice to see a beautiful morning. He invited her over to join him and see the fortress. She led them both around, explaining everything, and he warned them that no one else, besides the three of them, was allowed to enter the area. Sean wondered what would happen if any survivors came out. Would they be left to die? Jang explained that human nature was unpredictable. Both of them were shocked as they looked around the area. Jang told them that if he wasn't around when survivors came seeking refuge, the buffer zone could provide temporary shelter. However, he stressed that no one else should enter until he returned. He then showed them the food storage and explained which areas could be rationed out. As they toured the storage, he used his mind's eye ability and confirmed that both of them were fine. He mentioned that weapons were crucial, and they couldn't afford to let their guard down. He then handed each of them a weapon. Just as the system notified him to locate his former comrades, he grew excited and reminded them not to violate any of the rules. As he was leaving, Shan called out to him, asking where he was going. He replied that he was going to form a team. The scene shifts to a KTV club where a few of the boys were clubbing. Jiang Qi, along with one of the boys, went to the washroom while they were having drinks. When they came out of the room, she accidentally bumped into a girl and immediately apologized. However, the man accompanying the girl pushed Qi, telling him to watch his step. The boy with Qi asked why the man was acting like that. The man replied that it was the first time someone had dared to speak to him like that. The man then lifted the boy, and Qi quickly intervened, asking the man to let go, explaining that it was his fault and that he shouldn't hurt his friend. The man grew angrier, and just as things were escalating, a staff member from the club arrived. Seeing the fight, the staff member rushed over to try and calm the situation. The man, furious, turned on the staff member and asked how dare he disrespect him, claiming that even their boss wouldn't dare touch his clothes. The staff member urged the man to calm down, but the man grabbed him, threatening that if he didn't calm his boy down, he would show him just how terrible things could get. The staff member continued to plead for the man to settle down. Meanwhile, Jiang Qi and the boy finally made it to their party room. After they had a moment to relax, one of their friends asked if they were being chased. The boy explained that they had accidentally bumped into a man in the restroom who was drunk and wanted to start a fight. Fortunately, they managed to escape when the staff member intervened. The boy was shocked to hear all of this and wondered when their mechanical engineering class had ever backed down. He was about to call someone and show those guys who they were messing with. She stopped him, advising him not to act tough. He reminded him that there was less than a year until graduation, so it wasn't worth looking for trouble. Instead, he told him to just enjoy the music. Meanwhile, the bad man arrived with the injured staff member and his associates. He ordered them to capture the boys. The boys immediately dropped to their knees, and one of them tried to plead, asking for a chance to make a call. The bad man, furious, attacked him with a bottle, hitting him in the process. Outside the club, Jiang arrived and remarked that no wonder his teammate was at the club, facing the end of the world yet still had the heart to sing. He then entered the building. Inside, the man hit Chong and asked his girlfriend if she was okay now. She denied it, saying he wasn't the one who had bumped into her. Chong got up, ready to attack the man, but the others stopped him. The man grew angrier at the sight and struck Chong again with a bottle, causing him to fall once more. She and the fat boy rushed in to attack the man, and a fight ensued. However, Chi and the fat boy were quickly overpowered and beaten back. One of the boys huddled in a corner, trembling in fear. Suddenly, the staff member who had tried to intervene earlier turned into a zombie and lunged at the bad man, attempting to bite him on the neck. The man screamed to let go, shouting that he needed those two boys alive. The group tried to pull the zombie off, but it was incredibly strong. As they struggled, the zombie bit the arm of one of the men, causing everyone to panic as it seemed to grow even more powerful and insane. Just then, Jiang arrived, grabbing the zombie by the neck and lifting it effortlessly. He slammed the creature into the wall and ordered everyone to stop. The group was stunned, and the bad man, still in shock, asked Jiang who he was. Jiang turned to Qi and asked if he was okay, telling him to just follow him. As Qi was about to leave, the bad man tried to stop him, but suddenly, one of the bad man's head began spinning. He wondered aloud if his cold was getting worse. The man had mentioned the previous afternoon that it was just a runny nose. Jiang then told him that he had been bitten by the zombie. The bad man wondered what would happen next. Jiang suspected that the man was already infected, and since the bite was on his neck, the effects would likely show soon. Jiang continued holding the zombie, and the bad man demanded to know what Jiang was doing. Jiang threw the zombie aside and closed the door, thinking to himself that it was a good thing zombies hadn't figured out how to open doors yet. Afterward, Jiang turned to Qi and asked who needed to be taken out. She wondered if they even knew each other. The old man attempted to attack Jiang, but Jiang quickly stopped him, grabbing his face and then jumping to slam him into the glass table, shattering it. Another man rushed in to attack Jiang, but Jiang effortlessly used his hand to strike him back. Someone else rushed to check on the fallen man, asking what had happened and if he was done in just a single punch. Jiang asked if anyone else was unconvinced and wanted to test him, challenging them to come forward. Jiang instructed Qi to take his friends and wait outside the private room. As the bad men were leaving, Jiang stepped into their path, mentioning that the man was completely drunk and had even tried to kill Jiang's brother. The man asked what Jiang was talking about and told him to get out of the way. Jiang made him fall to the ground and then left, closing the door behind him. The man angrily struck the door, furious at Jiang's actions. Soon after, the man turned into a zombie. The others watching were confused, wondering what was happening. Inside, Jiang spoke to them, explaining that the man had turned into a zombie, now like a dog, biting at the others. They were all screaming for help. A man approached Jiang, asking if he needed any assistance. Jiang told him to close the door completely and insisted that no one should open it. He then told the man to call the police and an ambulance, explaining that there was a patient with rabid flu. The man, still confused, didn't understand what was going on, so Jiang shouted at him to act quickly. Finally, the door was locked. Jiang took Qi and his friends with him, leaving the scene. One of the men commented that the noise coming from the room was intense, while another wondered aloud if it was truly that chaotic inside. The first man mentioned that a guest had said the patient was suffering from rabid flu, while the second man wondered aloud if rabid flu was even real. Both of them decided to check the live surveillance footage. As they headed to the camera room, they were shocked to see that the people inside had turned into zombies and were viciously killing each other. Horrified, they quickly rushed to call the police. Meanwhile, Jiang was leading Qi and the others out, telling them that the place was no longer safe. As they left, Qi thanked Jiang, then asked about him. Jiang introduced himself, explaining that he had been hired to protect them, but he didn't feel it was necessary for them to know about his employer. One of the boys checked the internet and reported that there was no such thing as rabid flu. As Jiang had described, Jiang asked, "Was what happened in that private room just an illusion?" The fat boy then asked if there was any medicine for it. Jiang replied that there was none, and that the world was already at its end. As they were driving, they saw another zombie attacking a man outside the car. Jiang explained the situation, telling them that the chaos wouldn't stop there. He warned that if they wanted to survive, they had to follow his orders. All of them agreed. And with that, Jiang's mission to recruit Qi was complete. He checked his rewards and accessed the store. As he looked at everything, memories of Qi's past resurfaced, and Jiang realized that everything had now been settled. The scene shifts to Jing, who was on a call with Shu, discussing the current situation and the supplies. She apologized for being late in handling things. Suddenly, someone knocked on her door, and she was startled. She told Shu about the knock and approached the door. Using her eye point to look out, she saw that it was her friend. The girl explained that Liu had been taken away by the police and the ambulance. Jing then understood the chaos that had erupted downstairs that morning. The girl suggested calling Shu to get the supplies from Jiang, as he got a large stockpile of them. Jing asked how the girl knew this, and she explained that she had sent a spy to watch Jiang, which was how she found out about his resources. They both wondered if Jiang had been planning for the pandemic from the start. The girl then suggested contacting Jiang as soon as possible, and once he made money from it, they should get him to give them another share. When they arrived at Jiang's place, they were amazed, commenting that it looked like a fortress. Jiang chuckled and told them that everyone had the same reaction when they first saw it. Finally, Sheng and Shan greeted them as they arrived back. Jiang introduced Qi and his classmates, explaining that they would be their companions. Shan calmly welcomed them. Jiang then asked Sheng to show them around and explain the rules and regulations of the place. The fat boy commented that it felt like they were in northern Myanmar. Another boy asked Jiang for weapons, saying it would be helpful for defending the place. Jiang gave him a sharp glare, and the fat boy told him not to get so excited, as they first needed to earn Jiang's trust. Jiang reassured them not to worry. He mentioned that they would be provided with guns in a few days and then pointed out that the injured boy needed to be checked in the medical room, after everyone had refreshed themselves. One boy wondered why the fat boy had stopped him earlier. He wondered if they might even get weapons just by being there, or if they were essentially under house arrest in this situation. The two of them argued for a while. The boy then turned to Qi and asked why Jiang had saved them. Qi replied that Jiang had been hired to protect them. The angry boy disagreed, still wanting to leave. and even wondered if the injured boy might lose his organs in the process. He suggested they drive back and noted there were 2 more people besides Jiang. He even mentioned that the girl was cute, which caught the others off guard. He quickly reassured them, saying he was just joking around. She relaxed upon hearing this, and the fat boy remarked that if they really wanted to do something like that, they'd already been locked up. As they left, the boy was rude toward them, thinking that both of them would be his lackeys for life. Meanwhile, Jiang was sitting with Sheng, who reported that everything was taken care of. Jiang thanked him, knowing they couldn't predict what the next day would bring. He then asked Sheng to keep an eye on Chi's classmates, as they didn't seem to be in good shape. Later that night, Jiang went to the storage and checked the system store. He bought a supply box, reviewing the contents. The rewards seemed decent, but nothing extraordinary. While spending money wasn't ideal, he acknowledged that the resources were invaluable in the apocalypse. The next morning, a few cars pulled up in front of the house, confirming the address. A guide from previous day arrived, bringing a few people to Jiang's place. They attempted to break down the door, but one of them commented that it would be impossible to break it down with their current strength. The boss grew angry, wondering why someone would have such a thick door in a normal house. He then ordered them to bring out the big guns, fire bottles. He threw them toward the mansion, starting a fire. Shan and the others rushed to put out the fire, with Shan noting that the situation had already escalated to an extreme level. Meanwhile, Jiang and Sheng were armed and ready to face whoever was causing trouble. As they looked out, they saw the car driver from the previous day, the one they had bumped into. The bad man shouted at them, demanding they come out or he would burn the house down. Jiang calmly warned him to leave within 5 minutes, or things would turn bad for them. The men were shocked that Jiang had given them a warning. They weren't scared and were prepared to fight. Sheng asked if they should fire a warning shot. Jiang, however, was given the task to eliminate them all. He noted that the men looked like gangsters, so it was perfectly fine to kill them. It was better than letting them burn someone alive or putting others at risk in the apocalypse. Jiang fired, hitting one of the men in the hand. Jiang remarked that he missed the shot on purpose. Otherwise, it would have been an easy kill. The gangsters, terrified, began to retreat. Jiang told them to finish what they had started and said he was waiting for them. He then shot a few more of the men, while the others tried to escape in their car. Jiang reassured Sheng that there was no need to worry, as he grabbed the automatic rifle and started firing continuously at the car. Sheng was stunned, realizing that Jiang was much more skilled than he had been during his service time. This made him wonder, who exactly was Jiang? They finally eliminated all the attackers, and Jiang instructed Sheng to clean up the mess outside. However, after a moment of thought, he decided to let the bodies mutate into zombies and use them for practice drills with Qi and Shan. So he quickly told Sheng to leave them as they were. Sheng hesitated and asked if they were really going to just leave the bodies on the road. Meanwhile, Shu, along with Jing and Shreya, were driving toward a location. Shreya mentioned that their destination was just at the next intersection. Jing noticed that whenever Shu was around, Shreya would always put on an act. The car stopped a short distance from Jiang's house. Shu turned to Jing and asked her to go ahead and see if she could gain entry. Jing, however, insisted that Shreya should go as well. Shreya hesitated at first, making excuses, but Jing wasn't having it. She grabbed Shreya by the arm and pulled her forward, forcing her to go along. They both left their bags in the car and proceeded toward the house. As they left, Shu contacted the men waiting in another car nearby, instructing them to follow once Jing and Shuya entered the premises. While walking, Shuya grumbled, asking Jing why she had to drag her inside. Jing replied that she wasn't about to fall for Wen's dirty tricks. Shuya then made another excuse, saying that she could use this opportunity to get closer to Jiang since he already knew Shu and Jing. Just as they were talking, they suddenly came across several dead bodies ahead. The sight shocked them, and they immediately wondered if there had been a shootout. The two of them drew closer, and Shreya wondered aloud if they should turn back. Jing observed that it seemed like the bodies had been there for a while. She speculated that the two brutes might have fought over Jiang's supplies, and neither made it out alive. Jing then wondered if the supplies were still there, but she also considered the possibility that they should return and inform Shu's men. However, both of them hesitated, thinking about sneaking in to check if the factory was locked. As they stood there, one of the men who had died earlier began to mutate and turn into a zombie. They both noticed a door that was tightly shut, realizing they wouldn't be able to see anything inside. Shan called out to them from the watchtower, asking who they were and how they knew about the place. Shuga explained that they were friends of Jiang, and that Jing was his girlfriend. Shan then called Jiang, mentioning what they had said. Jing immediately understood why Jiang's attitude had changed suddenly. He had gotten a new girlfriend. Shuya tried to calm her down, reminding her that there was something more important to focus on, and she wondered if Shu would be able to handle it. Jing reassured her, saying not to worry, as Shu had brought a few pistols and was ready to take down Jiang if necessary. Jiang appeared at the watchtower and asked why they had come. Shuya casually replied that they were just checking on him, wondering if he was okay. Jiang used his mind's eye and quickly realized that they had bad intentions. He mentioned that he knew Shu was nearby and wondered how many people were with him and what weapons they had. He then started firing at them. As Jing shouted at him, Shuya calmed her down. She wondered how Jiang dared to shoot at them, to which Jiang coldly replied that it was so easy to kill them both. He went on to explain that they had seen the dead bodies that had turned into zombies due to the rabid flu, and how the disease could bring the dead back to life. Zombies rushed toward them, and they ran while calling out to Shu for help. She was shocked to see the zombies and quickly instructed them to turn their cars around. Realizing that the patients of the rabid flu had transformed, they immediately turned their cars to flee, but just as they were about to escape, Jing used her bag to trip Shuya, causing her to fall and become bait for the zombies. As Shuya faced her imminent death, she cursed Jing, vowing that she would never have a good end. Meanwhile, a system window appeared before Jiang, notifying him that an ordinary threat had been eliminated and assigning him a new task. Shan was horrified to see the people who had turned into zombies. He declared that this was officially the apocalypse and explained the situation. Anyone exposed to the outside air would eventually mutate into a zombie. He then urged her to call everyone for an urgent meeting. As they all gathered, Jiang announced that they had to stay inside for the next 2 days, keeping all windows and doors tightly shut. He explained that their bodies needed time to adapt to the infection source, which would significantly reduce the risk of mutation. She, however, was deeply worried about Chang, who was slowly turning into a zombie. The city was in ruins, destroyed by the zombies. Shang-Chi looked out from his window. All he could see were crows circling outside. He told his wife and son that he was going to gather the remaining supplies and instructed them to stay inside, warning them not to open the door for anyone except him. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door. She grabbed a hockey stick and cautiously opened it, only to find Yang Tao standing outside. However, Yang tricked him into falling, and a few of his men quickly joined him, capturing Ji. Ji was stunned, wondering how Yang, whom he had treated well in the past, could do this to him. Yang coldly told him that, in Ji's eyes, he was just a lackey. Ji retorted that if Yang had been wise, he could have saved up for a down payment on a house. Yang agreed, but then reminded Ji that he had earned enough for several houses. There was no point in talking anymore. He demanded the key to the warehouse and its address. When Ji refused to answer, Yang grabbed Ji's wife by the hair. As Ji's son tried to stop him, he was slapped away. Ji angrily demanded to know why Yang was treating his family this way, but Yang coldly reassured him, saying that as long as Ji cooperated, his family would be safe. He then ordered Ji to take them to the warehouse. They arrived at the warehouse, and Yang was disappointed to see that there wasn't much left. He asked if that was all left. He explained that Yang had brought in that big client, but even the expired food had been taken. Yang said that if they could take over the supplies Jiang had stocked up, it would be set for life. She warned him to stay away from Jiang, revealing that he had found a gun with Jiang when he went to deliver food. He suggested that Jiang was already aware of the disaster ahead. Yang dismissed it as Ji's problem and asked him what he was talking about. Yang then demanded that Ji bring the supplies from Jiang's warehouse. In return, he promised to ensure Ji's wife and child would be safe. The scene shifted to Jiang's factory, where they had Chang tied up. He was in the process of turning into a zombie, struggling and rolling loudly. The others could not ignore it, and one of them suggested killing Chang. He had already been bitten, and if they didn't finish him off, he might break free and put everyone's lives in danger. The fat boy asked if they were just giving up on Chang without trying to save him. Jiang agreed with the boy, saying there was no chance of recovery. He pulled out a dagger, handing it to the boy and instructing him to end Chang's suffering. The boy hesitated. Jiang reminded him that he had always wanted a weapon, and now was his chance to use it to put Chang out of his misery. Qi took the dagger, saying he would do it. Jiang asked if he was sure and what would happen if everything was a lie. What if what he had just said was false? Once they made their move, they would all officially become murderers. Qi replied that he trusted Jiang, then rushed ahead to strike the zombie's head. However, Jiang stopped them, stating that this was a special situation and the zombie could still be useful. As everyone left, Jiang told the zombie that he had an important task for it. Meanwhile, in the city, She was driving his car when it crashed into a streetlight, resulting in an accident. He stepped out of the vehicle, only to be attacked by a zombie that rushed at him and bit his hand. Enraged, she shoved the zombie away, grabbed a stick, and repeatedly struck it until he finally killed it. He muttered that this was no place to linger. The scene then shifts back to Jiang, where the group emerged with their weapons. Shan complained that with all the gear strapped to them, it felt uncomfortable and cumbersome. Jiang explained that zombies lacked rationality, making them more dangerous than normal humans. Given their limited combat experience, they were likely to get injured, which was why they needed extra protection. Once they gained more experience, they could remove some of the gear, spotting a zombie at the turn ahead. Jiang instructed them to get ready. They had now entered the zombie's perception range. The zombie spotted them and rushed to attack. Jiang told the others to remember what he had taught them. He dodged the zombie's attack and instructed the fat boy to aim for the temple or the back of the neck quickly. However, the fat boy hit the zombie's head instead and felt pain in his hand. Jiang explained that the skull was the hardest part of the head and that the boy's action was the perfect example of what they should avoid. The zombies leaped to attack the fat boy, and he pleaded for help. Jiang turned to Qi and said that his friend was asking for help. Now's the right time. Qi immediately struck at the zombie's neck, and together they began attacking the creatures. However, it was clear that one blow wasn't enough. A zombie approached from behind Jiang, and Qi saw it. He called out to Jiang, alerting him. Jiang effortlessly stopped the zombie with his hand and reminded them to never let their guard down, even when they were focused on their surroundings. Meanwhile, she was approaching the area. He noticed a large number of zombies already wandering around and wondered if Jiang had already died. Hearing Jiang's voice, she recognized it as he was guiding his comrades, directing their movements. She quickly hid behind a car, curious about whether they were hunting zombies. Inside the car, a zombie of Shirya suddenly lunged, pulling Ji inside and attacking him. Before the zombie could attack, Jiang shot it down, the blood splattering onto Ji's body. She shoved the zombie aside, and Jiang asked what she was doing there. She stood up, stunned, saying he couldn't believe Jiang was still alive. Jiang noticed that Ji's veins were changing, revealing that he had been bitten. As Jiang pointed his gun at him, she pleaded to don't shoot. Let me say something first. He explained that he was already infected, and it would only take half a day before he turned into a zombie. She then confessed that Men Yang had kidnapped his wife and child, blackmailing him to find a way to take all the resources Jiang had gathered. Ji admitted that he had done bad things, but it wasn't sustainable. His wife and child, however, were innocent, and he feared that the men behind this wouldn't spare them. He begged Jiang to save his family for the sake of the supplies he had helped gather. Jiang thought for a moment. The fortress still had considerable capacity, and there were far more men than women, which had thrown the balance off. He'd been given the task of taking care of Ji's wife and child, and street cleaning was already in progress. After a pause, he agreed to help Ji and care for his family. She knelt before Jiang, expressing his gratitude, vowing to be a loyal servant in the next life for such a favor. He then asked Jiang to kill him. Jiang instructed Shan to bring a bike, then told Ji to leave for an isolated place since he didn't have much time left. Ji thanked Jiang and quickly rushed away. Meanwhile, Jiang and his teammates gathered the dead zombies and burned them all. Jiang told them that their strength and experience with melee weapons had improved since they had fought without taking any damage. However, they were still not prepared to handle even a small group of zombies. He then instructed them to follow him. As they headed inside, Jiang handed them the key to the storeroom, where the weapons were stored, and informed them that he would be going to the city that night. Sheng pointed out that the city was probably a complete madhouse by now and questioned why Jiang was going alone. She and the fat boy also insisted on coming with him, but Jiang refused, stating that they were not ready for the dangers ahead. If they went, they would only be a burden. Reluctantly, they agreed. Jiang took a few weapons with him, got into a car, and left. Upon checking the system store, he found it empty and noted that the update process was unusually slow. Using his points, he refreshed the store and after doing so, picked a supply box since he had enough points. He'd received an injection that would enhance his physical strength and used it immediately. The scene shifts to Ji's home, where his wife was with their son, trying to calm him down, assuring him that his father would handle everything. Just then, Yang entered with another man. The woman asked what he intended to do, but he grabbed her, saying they were going to have some fun. He attempted to tear her clothes as she pleaded with him to stop. As the men were seducing her, Li arrived, asking what all the noise was about. One of the men suggested that Li join them, but Li grew angry, pointing out that the work wasn't finished yet and they were wasting time with this behavior. He demanded that they leave her alone. The man retorted that it wasn't the first time they had done this. Lee wondered aloud if they were messing with Ji's family and prayed to God that she wouldn't try to kill herself, for if she did, no one would leave that place alive. It reminded them all that they had made a deal with her husband, meaning she wouldn't get a single day of rest. After they left, Yang told her to wait for him. Later that night, Jiang was driving through the streets and noticed zombies all around. He calculated that his stamina was under 13 points, more than twice that of the average person. He decided to stop, get out of the car, and walk since it was too crowded to continue driving. Zombies immediately began to attack him. Jiang slammed one into another and then drew his parang to fight back. He sliced through the zombies' heads, muttering. They were even more powerful than the zombies. This was like the collection of an average person. His insight had significantly improved, but he soon realized that it was blocked, and the target was still about 800 meters away. Looking ahead, he saw a group of people inside a supermarket, surrounded by zombies. They were busy packing supplies to take with them. A boy asked his father if they were going to die there. The father reassured him, telling him not to worry. They would be with his mother soon, even in the worst-case scenario. A policeman asked if the father had really thought things through, pointing out that he was messing things up. The man showed the policeman his position, and the policeman wondered aloud if they were all going to die. The students heard some noise and saw zombies attacking outside. The policeman urged everyone to move the heavy objects aside and remain silent. Afterward, they cautiously stepped out to assess the situation, wondering who had caused the noise. The boy spotted someone and exclaimed that it was a mutant. It looks faster and stronger than the regular ones, just like in the comics and novels. His father shouted at him, reprimanding him for always thinking at the bottom of things. The policeman told the man to stop bringing up such matters at a time like this and instructed him to keep watching the surroundings, as they didn't want to be ambushed by the mutant. They continued toward their base, and as they reached a turn, they stopped and saw Jiang. They wondered aloud whether he was a mutant or a survivor. Jiang turned to face them and said, "Mutants aren't that common yet." The policeman warned Jiang that it would be dangerous for him to be out here alone and told him to come with them. He wondered if it was just them. The policeman replied that there were a few more people at Rongxiang Garden, and they were gathering supplies for everyone. Jiang mentioned that Jinyu Mansion was nearby the garden. The man agreed and asked Jiang to come with them. The policeman had a gun and plenty of experience battling mutants, and they promised to keep him safe as well. Jiang thanked them for their offer. The man then asked if someone important was in that mansion, perhaps a relative or a girlfriend. Since Jiang didn't respond, the man commented that whoever he was looking for might already be dead, and that he needed to be mentally prepared for it. The policeman grew angry, saying that even if people weren't killed by mutants, the real beasts would get them, referring to a ruthless group that murdered others to survive. He explained that he and his group had barely escaped, losing several members to those so-called beasts. Just as he was about to say they should stop talking about it, a zombie lunged at him. The boy shouted a warning just in time, and the policeman shot the zombie down. However, more zombies began closing in, forcing the group to rush into a nearby bus. As the undead swarmed around them, they pushed against the door, trying to break in. The policeman struggled to hold it shut, his strength failing. But John, using only one hand, easily slammed the door closed. The policeman stared in shock at Zhang's incredible strength. Zhang then instructed the others to break the windows and fight off the zombies while he held the door shut. They began following Zhang's instructions, and the policeman commented that the bullets weren't enough to take down all the zombies. In response, Zhang handed him a crossbow, which surprised the man. He wondered where Zhang had gotten it from. After a while, it finally managed to kill all the zombies surrounding them. The boy remarked that it wasn't a coincidence they had been saved twice in a row. Zhang cautioned them to stay alert and avoid making careless mistakes again. The scene then shifted to the factory, where Ming asked if he could keep watch that night. The fat boy, curious, asked what had gotten into him all of a sudden. Ming replied sharply, telling him not to talk nonsense and mind his own business. The fat boy wondered why Ming was acting so tough. Sheng, sensing the tension, mentioned that Ming was taking the brave step and advised everyone to go back to their rooms and rest. He also asked Ming to be extra careful and, if he noticed anything unusual, to wake them up. Later, on the watchtower, Ming figured it was late and everyone must have already fallen asleep. He realized there was no time to waste. He needed to get things sorted out before Zhang returned. Ming made his way to Sheng's room, noticing that the key to the warehouse was resting on Sheng's bed. As he reached for the key, Sheng woke up and asked what he was doing. Startled, Ming panicked, punching Sheng, causing him to fall, and then quickly ran away with the key. Shang immediately shouted to wake the others, alerting them that Ming had stolen the armory key and needed to be stopped. Everyone rushed to catch Ming, but he threw obstacles in their way to slow them down. While running, he spotted the room where the zombie was locked up. Curious, he checked inside and saw that one of the zombie's hands was free, and it had begun roaring again. Ming wondered why one of its bindings had come loose. Was the knot not tied properly? Then, with a sly grin, he realized that this mistake would save him the trouble of untying the zombie himself. The others arrived just in time to see what Ming had done. Shocked, they accused him of setting Chong free and putting everyone's lives at risk. Shang couldn't believe he had misjudged Ming so badly. Shan hesitated, unsure of what to do since all their weapons were locked inside the armory. Grandpa quickly suggested they work together to restrain Chong again. He instructed them to use the techniques Jiang had taught them and warned them to be careful not to get bitten. Without wasting time, they sprang into action. She grabbed Chong's neck while Shan and the fat boy restrained its arms. Shang flung open the medical room door and urged them to get the zombie back inside. With great effort, they managed to push Chong into the room and lock the door once again. Catching their breath, they looked at each other in disbelief. Had it really been that easy to subdue him? Shang expressed frustration, realizing they had wasted so much time. He feared that Ming had probably already found a weapon for himself. Ming, clearly angered, snapped back that he didn't know where Jiang had hidden all the weapons. The only one he had was the one he brought with him, and it was enough to deal with all of them. Once he was finished with them, he'd go and find the rest. He then ordered everyone to return to their room. Qi, furious with Ming, reminded him that Jiang had saved them all. Ming, however, had a different perspective. He believed that Jiang had only saved them once, yet they were all treating him like a savior and, in his eyes, acting like his slaves. Shang, equally annoyed by Ming's attitude, glared at him. As Ming pointed the gun, the zombie inside the room seemed to watch him, moving toward the gate. The scene shifted to Jiang and his group. The policeman was giving directions to Jinyu Mansion and warned them to be cautious due to the mutants in the area. He also asked them to return to the garden after they found the people and mentioned their base location. Jiang thanked him before leaving. The man wondered aloud whether they should go help Jiang, but the policeman cautioned that they didn't know what dangers lay ahead. They might even end up dead. He also reminded Jiang to be careful, though he acknowledged Jiang's impressive skills. Meanwhile, Yang and his team were waiting in the Z building, cut off from phone signals. Yang wondered if she had completed his task. One of the men muttered that he wasn't going to hold back for too long. By tonight, he would let loose. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to sleep. The second man guessed that Zhu was surely dead by now. They decided to tie up Zhu's wife so she wouldn't try to take her own life. When their time came, they wanted to enjoy themselves without any regrets. Meanwhile, Li was inside the house and warned them not to let the woman escape. As he glanced out the window, a frown crossed his face. He wondered why all the zombies outside were lying dead. Li looked toward the stairs, asking if it was a rescue. Suddenly, his head was severed from his body. The men quickly approached the lady, who demanded they leave her alone. They told her to stop pretending, and one of the men grabbed the child. Slapping the lady, the boy was shoved against the sidewall, and the man remarked that the lady was the target. The boy, defiant, said he would do whatever it took. He was then kicked out of the way and warned that his father wouldn't forgive them. As Li's body collapsed to the floor, Jiang arrived, calling out to the boy and asking if she was his father. Inside the room, Yang slapped the lady, and when she did make a loud sound, he mocked her, asking if she was worried her son would hear or if she simply didn't want them to enjoy themselves. One of the men mentioned he would go first. Just then, the door opened, and another man remarked that the boy had suddenly gained strength. Before he could say more, John killed him. Yang, now furious, wondered if they should just kick the boy out of there. But when he turned, he saw the man was already dead. Confused, he wondered what was happening. Jiang grabbed Yang by the head and slammed it against the wall, leaving the others stunned. One of the remaining men asked who Jiang was. In response, Jiang kicked him to the ground, causing the man to fall. The scene shifted to the factory, where Ming pointed the gun at them, giving them one last warning to move or he would shoot. Sheng suggested they do whatever Ming said, adding that Jiang would handle things, as he knew what to do. Ming, suspicious, wondered what Sheng had figured out. It seemed Sheng hadn't shown his ruthless side yet, and Ming realized that without establishing his dominance, things would never go his way. Just as Ming aimed to shoot Sheng first, a sudden noise interrupted them. To their shock, the lock on the medical room door clicked open, and a zombie emerged. Everyone was stunned. How could the zombie have opened the door? The zombie moved toward Ming, and he tried to shoot it, determined not to let it live. But when he pulled the trigger, the gun jammed. The zombie bit him, dragging him into the medical room. The others stood frozen, wondering what was happening. The zombie, eerily calm, didn't attack them. Instead, it closed the door again, tossing the key outside before locking it once more. They were left in confusion, unable to understand what had just occurred. Jiang tied up the two individuals and motioned for the boy to come to him. The lady asked, what was he going to make the boy do? Jiang ignored her and called the boy over. The boy reassured his mother, saying it was fine. Jiang handed him a dagger and instructed him to kill the two captives. The two boys, terrified, begged for their lives. The lady pointed out that the boy was just a child, but Jiang replied, from this day on, he was no longer a child. He was a man who must protect his mother. Now, gather his courage and kill these animals who tried to harm her. Filled with anger, the boy killed both men. Afterward, he asked if they already killed his father. Jiang nodded, and the boy collapsed into his mother's arms, crying. The lady pleaded with Jiang to take her son with him and promised to give him anything he wanted. However, the boy refused, saying he wanted to protect her. Jiang told them both to come with him, as he could promise Ji he would protect them. He gave them weapons, and they left together. As the boy noticed the zombies lying dead on the ground, he wondered aloud who had killed them all. Jiang replied that it was him, and then he turned to the lady, asking if they know the way to the Rongshan Garden. She mentioned Building 8 in the Rongshan Garden and indicated that it was in the direction he was currently facing. She then asked of the reason. In front of Building 8, the hostile men approached, announcing to the survivors inside that they would redistribute supplies fairly and demanding that all women under 40 come with them. Inside, a man wondered if they should simply surrender. However, the policemen disagreed, explaining that these men wouldn't keep their promise and that, in the end, everyone would die, except for Yuren and Ha Fang. The leader of the hostile group shouted that they were giving them 10 minutes to cooperate, warning that if they didn't, they wouldn't leave a single person alive. A girl suggested that perhaps the two of them should go out and beg the men to spare them. But another girl refused, saying she wouldn't use lust to save them. The policeman reassured them, stating that they weren't going to compromise and that these bad men wouldn't get past them. Outside, a man told his leader that while they had good weapons, the leader of the survivors also had a real firearm. If the survivors kept hiding, they couldn't easily force their way inside. The leader responded that there was no need to force their way in. They would simply shut off the main water supply to the ground floor and wait to see how long the survivors could last. Jiang, along with the lady and the boy, hid nearby, observing the situation. The boy wondered aloud if those were the bad men. Jiang nodded and prepared to move, stating that they were the same type of people who had tried to harm the boy's mother. The policeman, moving forward, instructed his team to hold the staircase and not reveal themselves while he went downstairs. He peeked out, spotting 7 of the hostile men, all fully armed, with 3 of them carrying guns. Suddenly, he heard a noise, followed by the sound of a man being struck and killed. Everyone turned to see who had made the attack. The policeman saw that Jiang was approaching, preparing to take on the hostile men. Jiang continued shooting, taking out his targets one by one, while a man hid nearby. When he heard no further shots, he hoped Jiang had run out of ammunition. Seizing the opportunity, the man stepped out to shoot Jiang down, but Jiang was already too close. The man fired, but Jiang easily dodged the shot, grabbing the man's hand and twisting it before driving the barrel of his gun upward and shooting him in the face, killing him instantly. Inside, 3 more enemies were armed. As Jiang entered, he swiftly took them down, instructing the survivors to come out. They all emerged, and the boy marveled at Jiang's skill, saying he was truly amazing. Jiang found a note detailing reinforcements and realized he needed to rescue the survivors from the Rongshan Garden. He asked who the people behind this were. The policeman explained that they were the bad men from Bikuishan Villas, located to the south of the city. He called Liu Chao and Chen Ji, wondering if they had traveled from the south and could provide more information about Bikuishan. The first man, Liu Chao, mentioned that these people were a powerful and resourceful gang. The second, Chen Ji, added that they had taken control of Bikuishan Villas, forcing nearly all the survivors from the south to join them. Jiang paused, thinking back to his previous life. Wasn't Bikuishan the place where Li Shushang and Jing had settled in the south? Could it be them? Jiang asked if they were both saying that Bikuishan was the only settlement left in the south. The first man denied it but acknowledged that Bikuishan's forces had weapons, and the smaller settlements couldn't defend themselves against them. The second man elaborated, explaining that the hostile group took over the settlements, killed half of the people, and then captured the young pretty women, forcing anyone who complied to join them. Jiang paused, deep in thought, then told them to hold onto the handguns from the 3 men they had just killed and check if they had extra magazines. He added that they probably have more. Jiang then handed his own weapon to the policeman, saying to keep it and he will leave the 5 magazines with them. The policeman asked if Jiang was serious. Jiang nodded, replying that the Bequishan crew won't let this go. With these weapons, 10 men won't be enough to take them down. Just hold out for a couple of days, and he will reorganize back home and come back to deal with them. A man asked if Jiang was really planning to take on Bequishan, but expressed doubt, saying that they had too many people and resources. The policeman agreed, adding that it wasn't worth risking their lives over. He said that they will just find another place and it was only a few kilometers away, and they won't search the whole city. Jiang reassured them not to worry about it, as it was personal between him and the Bequishan crew. In a few days, he will return with a bigger vehicle to take them all to the east of the city. The policeman wondered why they were heading east, and Jiang explained that near the old Tea Leaf City, he was building a stronghold there and he needed people. He mentioned that he would be leaving with Ji's wife and child, advising them all to stay careful. The policeman wished him safety in return. The scene shifted to a mansion, where Shu was sitting with 3 other individuals. A red-haired boy named Wen was looking over some documents and asked, "Haven't they already dealt with the supplies at the Jinyu Entertainment Center?" Shu replied that he had already sent people there and they should have returned by now. Kai Get told Wen that many high-end affiliates were staying at Jinyu Mansion, and they couldn't just take the supplies from the entertainment center without consequences. Shu agreed, stating that they were on the same page and he had instructed his people to bring back anyone alive. Wen, still dissatisfied, remarked that he hadn't completed a single task assigned to him yet. Shu reassured him, saying to not worry and he will make sure everything was handled perfectly this time. He then stepped outside, where a man asked if Shu was alright. Shu asked if the 7 men had made it back. The man replied that he had sent people to check and receive bad news. Shu frowned, saying that all 7 were killed, and one of them wasn't even a regular civilian from Rongxiang Garden. How did 3 guns fail to take them down? He then ordered to go and tell Taozi to gather everyone who can handle weapons. There's no way he was letting this fail. Jiang returned home, and as soon as he pulled up, everyone rushed to his car. Shan exclaimed that he finally made it back. The system displayed that his task of protecting had been completed. Jiang looked at the group and commented, "So it really was Ming." Shan asked if Jiang had known all along. She suggested taking the lady and her son to show them their room before meeting Jiang in the infirmary. They met in front of the infirmary, and the group asked if Jiang had known about Ming's intentions from the start. Jiang picked up a gun, replying that he wasn't completely sure, but he was certain that one of Qi's friends was a scumbag. He showed them the bullets, revealing they were rubber. Sheng confirmed that Ming was in the infirmary. Jiang recalled the name Chong, mentioning how rare a mutant he was. He then explained what he had asked Chong earlier, asking him to blink his eyes 3 times if he understood. When Chong complied, Jiang also asked him a simple math problem, which Chong answered correctly. Jiang explained that after the apocalypse, those infected by otherworldly sources had only a slim chance of becoming rare mutants. These mutants usually possess greater intelligence or potential than regular zombies, and in some cases, they retain fragments of their past memories. Fortunately, Chong had turned out to be one of these rare mutants. As Jiang opened the gate, Chong was seen with his foot on Ming's face, waving at them. Jiang told Chong that it was enough and there was no need to hold him down any longer, just finish him off. As Chong dragged Ming away, Qi asked if Chong remembered him. Chong growled at him, then, to everyone's surprise, teased Qi by touching his private area and smiling. Qi realized that even though Chong was a zombie, he still remembered him. Unable to keep his instincts in check, later, Jiang lay in bed in his room and discovered that he had unlocked a hidden achievement, Mutant Companion. Curious, he checked the shop to see if there were any changes. He found a level 1 box, something he had never seen before. It cost 50 points to open. He decided to open the other 2 boxes first so they wouldn't take up space. As he opened them, he found incredibly powerful weapons and wondered if this was just the level 1 box, what the level 2 or 3 boxes might contain. One item in particular caught his attention, the infection blocker. It seemed like it could cure someone before they fully turned into a zombie. Excited, Jiang couldn't wait to open the level 2 box, but he reminded himself to focus on finishing the metal work the next day. He planned to recruit survivors from Rongxiang Garden. The next morning, Jiang prepared for a shooting practice session with his comrades. He informed them that from that day forward, they would each need to spend at least 1 hour a day practicing their shooting. As the group continued their shooting practice, Jiang instructed Sheng to gather everyone, including Qi, to clear a few more rooms. He mentioned that there were some survivors in Rongxian Garden whom he planned to bring back the same day. Sheng agreed and set to work. Jiang called Chong, who was currently wearing a mask to blend in and distinguish himself from the others, and asked him to accompany him. Together, they left the base and found a bus that had been overtaken by zombies. They quickly cleared out the zombies, making sure none were left behind. Jiang handed the key to Chong and said that there's no one left here, and they can take them out, and when it's just the two of us, there's no need for restraints. But once they reach Rongxian Garden, make sure to put them back on, and they don't want to scare anyone. The scene shifted to Shu's mansion, where a pickup truck full of people waited. The group anxiously asked why the other person hadn't arrived yet. Shu, however, refused to believe that they couldn't take down Rongxian Garden with the number of people they had. Finally, after some hesitation, they left. As the zombies roamed the road, growling, Jiang drove the bus, running them over to clear the path ahead. In Building 8 of Rongxian Garden, the survivors were eating when suddenly they heard the sound of an engine. The child mentioned that Jiang had come to take them away. The policeman asked her to stay quiet and let him check first. His assumption was confirmed. It wasn't Jiang, but a group of armed men with Shu among them. Shu ordered them to move forward. The policeman remarked that it wasn't Jiang, but rather people from Biku Mountain. One man wondered if they hadn't learned their lesson, as they were returning again. A boy replied that, armed with guns, they would deal with them. The policeman advised them not to be so cocky, as there were more enemies, each armed. He told them to stick to the plan and set up an ambush before heading to the rooftop. From outside, Shu and the others spotted the survivors, and he noted that the distance was ideal. If they got in closer, the survivors would be within range. Then, they opened fire, relentlessly shooting to instill fear in the survivors. Shu grabbed the loudspeaker and instructed everyone to keep aiming at the windows. He told them to shoot anyone they saw. As he called out to everyone, suddenly the man next to him was shot down, and another was injured in the leg. They quickly ran for cover, realizing that it was the policeman attacking them from the top floor with a long-range automatic rifle. Shu remarked that the intel had indicated the survivors only had pistols, and including the one they had taken from the 7 idiots during the last incident. There were just 4 pistols. So where did they get the automatic rifle? A man asked what they should do next, and Shu ordered them to retreat. The men began running, but Shu told them to wait for his signal before running together. Just then, another man was shot down. Shu ordered everyone within his signal to charge when he counted down to 1. As he did, they all started running, firing as they went. Afterward, Shu continued running, remarking that the survivors probably wouldn't have many bullets left. Finally, he reached the car, and they began to drive away. However, one man was left behind and was shot down. Even worse, 2 bullets struck the tires of the pickup truck. Jiang kept driving the bus, and as he was about to turn, he noticed someone heading in the opposite direction. He wondered who it was but decided to ignore it, reminding himself that completing the mission was more important, as the points were his priority. They finally reached Building 8, and as they got out, Jiang saw the bodies of the people who had been killed. He remarked that the rifle they had left behind must have been useful, and the car they had seen earlier likely belonged to the fleeing raiders. As Chong growled, Jiang wondered if he was hungry. He suggested they go ahead and eat, noting that it was better for Chong to eat now than risk becoming the food of other zombies. Chong began to feast, and Jiang told him to meet him under Building 8 in the compound once he was done. Jiang moved ahead, commenting that the policeman hadn't held back when it came to the killings. The child saw Jiang through the window, and soon, everyone gathered and looked out, calling for him. They all came down, and Jiang asked if they had managed to fend off the attackers. The policeman nodded, acknowledging that it was thanks to the rifle Jiang had provided. He explained that before his retirement, he had been an expert marksman with a rifle. They suddenly heard a roar. It was Chong, but no one else recognized the sound. So they immediately went on alert, ready to shoot. However, Jiang stopped them, saying it was one of their own. The policeman was confused, asking what he meant. Jiang pointed to more corpses for Chong to eat. The policeman was stunned and asked what was going on, questioning if Jiang was communicating with zombies. Jiang explained that Chong wasn't an ordinary zombie, and it was complicated to explain. He instructed everyone to get on the bus, promising to explain everything to them on the way. He told Chong to eat quickly and then return to the bus. Chong stood up and put on his muzzle. The child watched, finding it strange that even this zombie behaved differently. Jiang warned the child to be careful, as if Chong heard something, he might attack. The situation was unusual. As Chong entered the bus and walked inside, the policeman noticed the bus seemed to tilt slightly. Chong repeated a word several times, and Jiang was pleased to see that Chong could now speak. He thought that after eating 6 corpses, Chong, as a zombie, seemed to have started evolving further. They needed to hide and use the opportunity to convert those points into the strongest force in the settlement. Then, they all left the area. The scene shifts to the mansion, where Shu stood facing Kai and Wen. Kai, enraged, blamed Shu for not accomplishing anything. Shu defended himself, saying it wasn't his fault, but those people really did have automatic rifles. Wen scoffed, dismissing it as nonsense, questioning how a small-town cop could have such weapons, and wondered if Shin thought they were all idiots. Shu denied it, suggesting that if Wen didn't believe him, he should send someone else to check. In response, Kai kicked Shu. As Shu was leaving, Kai remarked that Shu's adventure had been pointless, especially since his men had taken heavy losses. Stu wondered aloud if Kai had his eye on the lady who was with Shu. Kai quickly dismissed the comment, replying that they should all share her as a shared property. Wen, unconvinced, said he didn't trust Shu and would wait for an opportunity. Shu overheard everything from outside and, in frustration, began smashing things in his house. Jing arrived to calm him down and mentioned they were leaving that place. Shu asked where they were going, and Jing replied that the area wouldn't be safe for much longer, so they needed to plan ahead. He called King Zi to gather all the remaining people by midnight. Meanwhile, Jiang brought the survivors to his base. As they entered, the boy remarked that it looked like a fortress. The system confirmed completion, and the target had been exceeded, granting a bonus. Jiang told Chong that the next night, they would head to the southern district. The policeman, shocked, asked why. Jiang replied that there were unresolved issues from the past, and he needed to meet with those people at the Bikui Mountain Villa. Later that night, Jiang opened a level 2 chest and sensed something strange. Jiang found a serum that could increase his physical strength by 20 points. After consuming it, his total strength reached 33 points, more than 6 times that of an average human. He grabbed a fly to examine it closely before letting it go. That evening, as Jiang and Chong were heading towards the car, the policeman, Li, asked if he was going south of the city and whether he needed anything. Jiang replied that Li's marksmanship was probably the best around, so he asked if Li could train the others. Li assured him to leave it to him. With that settled, Jiang left with Chong in the bus. That night, Shu stood with a few men, wondering how King Zi's side was doing. A boy reassured him not to worry, as they should already be in position. Just as they were about to leave, a car approached them. Dong Shu stepped out, holding a pistol, and asked where Shu was going. Shu replied that they were planning to head to Rongshan Garden under the cover of darkness for another chance. Su signaled to a boy, who then dragged out a corpse. Another boy hesitated before asking if it was King Zi. Enraged, Shu punched one of his men, yelling at them for their poor eyesight and asking if that body looked like King Zi to them. He turned to Su and insisted that he didn't know the dead person. Without hesitation, the men around Su opened fire on Shu's group, killing several of them. Shu demanded to know what Su was doing. Su sneered, remarking that Shu had a sharp tongue, and then ordered someone to check who was sitting in the car. As Jiang looked on, he saw Wen at the back with Jing resting her head on Kai's shoulder. Kai told Jing to stop denying it. She had already told them about Shu's betrayal plan. Shu was furious with Jing, demanding to know how she dared betray him. Kai asked Wen how they should handle the situation. Wen gestured to Shu, and they hung him by the rope, leaving him suspended as punishment. Jiang and Chong arrived after leaving the bus. As Jiang got closer, he saw Shu hanging from the rope. Jiang noted that the job had been done well, though he regretted not being the one to do it himself. He then cut the rope, letting Shu fall to the ground. Jiang declared that given the tragic end of Shu, he would help him get revenge. Meanwhile, in a room, Jing was tied to a bed, and the 3 men were having their way with her. She, struggling, demanded to be released, saying that she had made such a big contribution and this was how they were treating her. Wen replied that the reward wasn't so bad and that he was coming. Kai stood there, then suddenly heard a noise. He turned toward the window, looking out to see what it was. He was shocked to find that his people had all been killed. As someone knocked at the door, Wen and Kai exchanged confused glances, wondering what was going on. Jiang suddenly jumped through the window and killed Kai. Wen, in shock, wondered who Jiang was. Jing, recognizing him, called out his name. Jiang threw a dagger, aiming to kill Wen, but it struck him in the chest and he fell to the ground. Jing shouted at Jiang, demanding to know how he dared to show up and what he wanted. Jiang casually remarked that they seemed to be having fun and wondered what Shu would think if he saw them like this, before opening the door. Shu, now in the process of transforming into a beast, lunged at her, ready to bite her to death. She apologized mentally, realizing how wrong she was, and begged him to stay away. But Jiang ignored her pleas and left her to be killed. He emerged with Chong, instructing him to take the corpses and eat them. Chong hesitated, suggesting they only eat one, but Jiang signaled to the others. In a dark room, several people were captured. A cook emerged, holding a weapon, and another man with a knife grabbed a girl, commenting that she was soft and tender, perfect for their needs. The cook, deploying Shiva, exposed his skin and then pointed toward a chubby boy. As the boy was dragged away, his mother begged for mercy, pleading for him to be spared. But the cook kicked her back, ignoring her cries as she continued to beg. The mother pleaded for mercy, asking if they could spare the boy. Suddenly, 3 holes appeared in the door, followed by the distinct sound of a shotgun. The cook wondered who still had one. A boy replied that no one did, except for their boss. The boy then ran back to his mother. The door creaked open slightly, and the cook ordered a man to go check what was happening. The man moved cautiously with his gun, but he was clearly a fool for venturing there. The others realized it was a zombie and prepared to shoot it down. As they fired, Chong burst through the window, grabbing the cook's face and twisting it to kill him, then turning on the other members of the group. The remaining people wondered why the zombie wasn't attacking them and what made it different from the others. Jiang arrived, praising Chong for being so fast even with the chains and masks still on. Chong smirked, saying it made him look even cooler. The others were terrified as the zombie spoke. The group was concerned about the zombie, but Jiang reassured them, telling them not to be afraid, as it wasn't going to attack them. A young girl spoke up, saying that super monsters kill without hesitation. Jiang, intrigued, asked if she had seen someone like him before. The woman with the girl nodded in agreement. Jiang then inquired about where they had come from, and the woman mentioned the Decor City in the east part of the town. Jiang thought it would take at least another month or 2 to get there, and noted that Decor City was not far from the old tea leaf town. Chong, confused, asked what that was. Jiang explained that there were rare mutants like him, and that depending on the individual, there were varying levels of sanity and memory. This meant that some mutants had superior hunting abilities compared to others. However, due to the instability of some mutants, most of them were violent and extremely dangerous. Chong, thinking about someone like him, relaxed as Jiang assured him that he was the lucky one. And with Jiang by his side, he wouldn't lose his sanity. Hidden wondered if there were any other survivors in the Bikui Mountain Villa. A man responded, saying there were quite a few locked up in the sales office. A girl added that there might still be a few people alive in the basement. They decided to check, but after finding no one, Jiang explained that those people regularly captured survivors from nearby and slaughtered them. He then asked if that was why there were no gathering spots in that part of the city, as they had been killing so many people. He questioned whether they could even eat that much. A man revealed that those people even transported the meat outside, but they didn't know how many of them were involved. Jiang pondered this, wondering if they were feeding the zombies. He then asked about the situation at the sales office. The man explained that it was near the south gate, about a kilometer away, and proceeded to tell Jiang the full situation there. He had observed a series of missions taking place. The scene then shifted to the sales office, where 2 men were guarding the entrance. The first one mentioned that he had vaguely heard gunshots from the north earlier. The second man speculated that they were probably using live people for target practice. At that moment, Chang's team appeared in front of them and swiftly killed them. Inside a room, 4 girls were sitting with scant clothing, drinking and talking about what was going on. As they sensed someone was about to open the door, the second girl warned them not to let anyone in. But it was John who entered, telling them all to come out. He had rescued a few more people, and the girl asked if he was truly willing to provide them a place to stay. Jiang agreed, but mentioned there would be conditions. Everyone would have to work. They all readily agreed to this. Jiang told them there was no time to waste and that they needed to get going. They all piled into the bus and prepared to leave. They finally arrived at the fortress, and Shan, along with Qi, saw them approaching. Shan went to open the door, but Qi suggested they wait since Jiang hadn't driven the car directly inside. He wanted to see what Jiang intended to do first. Jiang and the others stepped out of the car, and he explained that while this was their fortress, he couldn't let them inside just yet. The group grew worried, wondering where they would stay. Jiang reassured them, mentioning that there were temporary houses available. While these weren't as secure as the fortress, they were suitable under certain conditions. Many of the houses were still unfinished, but the open space in the old tea leaf town could be used. Over time, they would improve the area and turn it into a model settlement. The group bowed in gratitude, thanking Jiang for his kindness, and promised to support him. The next day, the scene shifted to a woman traveling in a car with a track moving beside her. She wondered what had happened to King Wen and why no one was responding. Feeling something was wrong, she went to check Wen's room, only to find Shu, Kai, and Wen had all turned into zombies. They immediately attacked her, but she easily defeated them with her dagger. A man nearby commented that they were dead, asking what to do about the meat. The owner replied that there was no choice but to handle it themselves. However, before doing so, she needed to deal with whoever had broken their rules, as she intended to kill them. As they emerged, a man called out to her, addressing her as Sheen, and told her that there were no survivors left. She wondered about the meat, and the man confirmed that it was still there. Sheen instructed him to bring the vehicle over and load it up. The people began unloading the supplies, and as Sheen observed, she noticed something. The man approached and asked what she had found. Sheen replied that she wanted to see who could pull it off, as there was a tire track visible. Meanwhile, Jiang was considering how to expand the community. He thought about the community rating and how to increase it, knowing that population growth would be a key factor. There was enough land, thanks to the snob who had understood him back then. Jiang's thoughts briefly drifted to the rare species he had heard about. He was soon introduced to all the people, and a lady dropped to her knees, calling him a savior. Jiang quickly reassured her that there was no need for such a gesture. Jiang asked another woman about the super monster. She confirmed that she had seen it and added that it was near the Huayawanfa marketplace, close to Decoration City. She went on to tell the entire story of how the beasts were created. Jiang, intrigued by the mention of Huayawanfa, turned to Shan, who confirmed they still had plenty of supplies and that there was no need to engage with the monsters just yet. She pointed out that, in the end, the supplies wouldn't last forever. Jiang responded that the most important thing was that Decoration City was less than 2 kilometers away, and they couldn't afford to let a monster that close threaten their safety. The lady was shocked and begged them not to go, warning that the monster killed without mercy. Jiang reassured her, telling her not to worry as they knew exactly what they were doing. He then asked Qi to contact Chong, and they would go face the creature together. Meanwhile, in the market, a few survivors had gathered. Armed with weapons they had scavenged. A man told them that there was a large supermarket nearby. The second man cautioned them not to get their hopes up, suggesting that it might already be cleaned out. A girl, however, urged them not to be so pessimistic, reminding them that they had already made it this far to the supermarket, so there might still be something left. She encouraged them, saying that it took guts and skills to roam freely in the apocalypse, and that there probably weren't many like them. They reached the supermarket and found that it had been scavenged, but not entirely. They made some noise, calling out to see if anyone was around. Suddenly, a group of zombies appeared and began attacking them. The survivors fought back and quickly killed the zombies with ease. One man speculated that the zombies might have been the remnants of a horde encountered by the previous group of scavengers. Another boy wondered if they had hit the jackpot. Summer suggested they stay alert and go deeper into the store. The rare zombie, however, was hiding nearby, watching them without making a move. They'd found a few useful items and felt like the new year had come early. With the supplies, they should last for a few years. A girl spotted a bed and immediately jumped onto it, lying down. The group felt a sense of relief, happy to stay in a place that, for now, didn't seem like a bad idea. Two of the boys ventured ahead for a smoke, and as they did, the first boy asked if they were really going to stay there. The second boy agreed, mentioning that the mall had many entrances, making it hard to defend. Plus, with all the supplies, it would surely attract others. However, he had noticed a 2-story building nearby, which seemed like a better option. Suddenly, a zombie appeared, targeting the first boy, commenting that he looked tender and fresh, and that the taste would be great. The second boy ran in fear and called out for help. The others turned just in time to see the zombie strike, its spiky hands tearing into the second boy. The group was shocked, and panic set in as they began running away. As the zombie continued to kill, it shouted that no one would be able to escape. The girl sprinted toward the exit, desperate to survive. She was almost there when she tripped and fell, paralyzed by fear. Chong arrived, and the girl begged him, asking not to kill her. Chong walked ahead, and Jiang reassured her, telling her not to be afraid. As she looked at him, she wondered if he was the person who had bought the land. He recognized her and asked if she was really Ning, the real estate saleswoman. Ning quickly explained that there was a monster in the mall and urged them to run. Jiang asked her to calm down, As the monster had already been dealt with, the zombie had been stopped by Chong, who wondered if the creature thought it could take him down by itself. Jiang asked Chong if he could handle it alone. Chong replied that he would give them a demonstration. As Chong pushed the zombie back, the creature said it was the first time it had met someone like itself and that it was thrilled. It rushed forward to punch Chong, but Chong easily dodged the attack. The zombie speculated that eating someone of its own kind might speed up its evolution. It prepared to punch again, but before it could, Chong struck it with a powerful punch that sent it crashing to the ground. The zombie grinned, admitting that Chong was strong. As it tried to get up, Chong used his leg to slam it back down. However, the zombie ended up clinging to the ceiling, declaring that the power it had accumulated from hunting was finally going to be useful. It continued battling Chong. He told Jiang that Chong was losing, remarking on how strong the zombie was. Jiang replied that the trip had been worth it, and if they had left it hunting for a bit longer, it would have become unstoppable. He then manifested a gun, and Ning stopped in surprise as he pulled a girl out of the air. Jiang told Chong that if he could hold the zombie for just 1 second, he wouldn't tease him later. Chong managed to stop the zombie for a brief moment, and the creature begged to be released. Jiang shot the zombie in the head, causing it to fall back. Despite this, the zombie was still alive, claiming it was finally starting to feel pain and vowed to kill them all. She was shocked that even after a headshot, the zombie wasn't dead. Jiang continued firing, but the zombie only laughed. After a while, the zombie lay still, and she wondered if it was finally dead. Jiang suggested that Chong eat the zombie, as it might make him stronger. He noticed a change in his mission objectives and told them that since they were at this location, they weren't going to leave empty-handed. He proposed that they try clearing out the supermarket. Ning wondered about clearing it out, and Jiang used his powers to make some items float in the air. She marveled at what kind of magic this was. Jiang used a ring to manipulate the objects, then remarked that, instead of lifting the bodies, they should turn them into zombies. He casually told Chong that if he was hungry, he could eat them. As Xin asked which way the man was going, he stopped his car and looked through a telescope. She wondered what he was thinking. He focused on Shan guarding the fortress. Noticing that there were a lot of people around, the man observed that a decent number of people were there, and their only advantage was that their warehouse was exceptionally sturdy. The driver wondered how they had taken down Wen and Kai. Xin thought it was obvious, the sneaky tactics they used to lure in a horde of zombies. She had mentioned before that the Villa district wasn't the same as their base. She felt that heaven must be pitying them, sending them prey and a new base. The man remarked that it almost made him feel guilty. The driver asked if they should attack now. Xin declined, suggesting they return to the group and bring more weapons and people before making their strike. So they began to leave, while on the other side, Jiang and the others were returning. She was talking about the hot water for showers and the mattresses, which made Ning so happy to hear. Jiang asked Qi to get ready, as someone was approaching. But as the two cars passed each other, Jiang made eye contact with Xin, and he received a new mission. Jiang wonders if the invasion could be linked to those people. He enters the fortress and makes his way to the watchtower, asking Shan if she has seen any strangers recently. She replies that she saw a car passing by in the distance, but it didn't head in their direction. She thought it might have been them returning and then asks what's wrong. He asks her to tell Shu and Li to gather everyone, as he has something important to announce. The scene shifts to the southern suburb coal plant, where only a few people were wandering around with walkie-talkies. They make contact with someone who asks if they had reached the south suburb coal plant, as they were in the process of establishing a settlement and need more manpower. A boy mentions that they should be nearby. They soon spot a car, and it turns out to be Xin, who steps out and asks if they heard the broadcast and came to join them. The survivors agree and glance at her revealing outfit. Xin approaches one of the boys, commenting that they had arrived at just the right time, and asks them to follow her. The boy thanks her with a confused look, glancing at the other boys. Someone mentions that the car won't fit everyone, so they will walk the rest of the way. Finally, they reached their destination, and the boys were impressed by how special the place was. It felt like they finally had a place to stay. One of the boys said he needed to use the restroom, so he would step outside for a moment before returning. Xin quickly responded, saying there was no need to go outside, as they had a bathroom here. She asked him to follow her. He agreed. As he was peeing, Xin was watching him. He caught her eye and, sensing her intentions, called her over, knowing exactly what she wanted. Without warning, Xin stabbed him to kill him, saying it would be a good catch. Afterward, she stepped outside, where another boy informed her that everything had been taken care of. Xin thanked him and instructed him to drag the boy out of the bathroom as well. All the survivors were killed, and Sheen asked to call numbers 2 and 3 while they dealt with the bodies. The scene shifts to Xiang, where all the people were gathered around the table. Li wonders if someone was targeting them. Jiang replies that he knows nothing about the enemy, but from now on, they need to stay on guard, as they could face an attack at any time. He then asks Xi and Chong to come with him later to clear out the unfinished building in the southeast. They plan to shift the refugees there temporarily, or they would become easy targets if an attack occurred. Shan and the fat boy say they will join as well. The two boys from the south joined as well, and the son of Ji eagerly volunteered to help. Ning also came forward to assist. Jiang stated that the area should be relatively safe, and he assigned Li and Sheng to stay behind to guard the base, while the rest were free to come along. They all prepared to head to their destination and began battling the zombies. After clearing the area, Jiang asked if anyone was hurt, since no one was injured. Jiang informed them that they might be attacked in the coming days. For now, they should settle down in this area. The people were ready to fight back and pledged their support. Jiang agreed it was fair and then instructed them to clean the place first. He promised they would send over handguns and magazines later. When the enemy attacked, they would coordinate using walkie-talkies, so they should follow his orders. Meanwhile, at Sheen's base, she was putting meat into containers when a man arrived with a giant mutant. He asked how things were going. The mutant was particularly hungry for human meat. Sheen was enraged, as Biku Mountain had been wiped out, and now the food was all theirs. The man wondered who was responsible. The mutant was dissatisfied, as it hadn't gotten any human meat. Sheen mentioned a group from the east suburb and said that the next morning, she would take number 2 and lead number 18 to wipe them all out. Later that night, Jiang checked his points and saw he had 46 points. He decided to check the store to see if there were any new crates. Upon checking, he found new stock, including 2 level 2 crates that would cost 40 points in total. He hoped they would contain something useful. As Jiang saw the reward, he noticed a total enhancement of 25%. With his current 33 points, this would boost his strength the equivalent of 8 times that of an average person. Excited to test his new abilities, he injected it without hesitation. The next morning, Sheen and her group left by car and bike. The man who was managing things for her asked for her instructions. She told him to reiterate the attack strategy to everyone. First, they would drive through and eliminate all the refugees outside. Once number 2 began breaking down the door, everyone would use the modified vehicles for suppressive fire. The mutant was with them as well, complaining of being hurt and craving human meat. Meanwhile, Jiang and Li were overseeing everything from above. Li mentioned that the spot was more secure, but the blind spots along the walls were huge, making it worse than the watchtower. Jiang reassured him, saying that staying there wasn't just about the view. When Li asked about the purpose, Jiang reminded him that he had worked as a sniper for a few years. Li replied that it was just a temporary position. Jiang then wondered if Li could snipe from around 200 meters. Li responded confidently, saying he could easily snipe from 500 meters. Li agreed, and then she arrived with a box, wondering what was inside. Jiang opened it to reveal the Barrett. Li was shocked, as such a weapon wasn't easily obtained. Jiang explained that they only had 2 magazines, so they had 10 rounds to work with. Li accepted the weapon, agreeing to the plan. Jiang asked if everyone else was ready, and Qi confirmed. Jiang nodded, then told everyone to stay on high alert, as the enemy could appear at any moment. As they remained on guard, Shan contacted Jiang, informing him that she had spotted something unusual. Li mentioned he could see it too. It was an enemy attack. Sheen and her group arrived, and one of the men looked at the fortress, noting it was strange that all the refugees outside the wall had disappeared. He wondered if they had been slaughtered for meat. The driver asked if they should stop the car to observe. Sheen immediately dismissed the idea, ordering them to charge in since they were close enough. If the enemy spotted them, it would make attacking much harder. They'd all charged toward the fortress, taking cover by the wall. Shan reported that the enemies were in the rain, so they should open fire. The group began shooting at the cars, and several of the enemy forces were gunned down. One of the men shouted that they had been spotted. Sheen, shocked, replied that it was impossible. They asked her what to do next, but she still ordered them to charge in. They finally reached the entrance, and the mutant stepped forward with an iron cutter, ready to break down the door. Shan noticed this and quickly ordered the others to keep shooting at him to stop them from breaking in. Sheen and her group fired back, providing cover for number 2. As bullets flew in both directions, Shan and the others dodged for cover. Suddenly, a bullet struck Xiao Kai, the fat boy, in the shoulder. Qi rushed to support him, helping him sit down while warning the others that the enemies had plenty of submachine guns, and their firepower was just as strong as theirs. A man shouted for them not to panic and to hold their ground since they had enough ammo. Shang and a few others stood in front of the door, watching the enemies cut through the gate. Shang remarked that once it was broken, the enemy would have the advantage. A boy voiced his concern, but Zhang reassured him, saying he had a plan. Without hesitation, he rushed off. Meanwhile, one of Sin's men reported that they had already used up half of their ammo. Xin grew impatient and asked if number 2 was done yet. Someone replied that it was almost finished, just a little more. As the gate began to give way, Shang yelled for everyone to hold their positions and prevent the enemies from getting in. Xin smirked and told the let's see how these rookies handle the terror of an evolver. She then ordered her people to follow her and stay behind number 2. Once we're inside, secure the area, she commanded. At that moment, Zhang turned to Li. Be ready and wait for my signal, he instructed. That big guy was about to enter. Li steadied his aim, locking onto the giant mutant through his scope, his finger hovering over the trigger. A man wondered if that giant figure was truly human. The event fired a bullet toward him, but nothing happened. She was regenerating her body. She wondered if they were seeing an evolver for the first time. Li realized that the giant had a healing ability, and their small guns weren't powerful enough to kill it. Just then, Li attacked with his sniper rifle, blowing off half of the giant's upper body. They were all left wondering what was happening and how this was even possible. Xin was shocked, questioning how they managed to get their hands on such high-caliber weapons. Zhang arrived at the gate and shot them all from behind, stunning them with a surprise attack. Xin realized it was a miscalculation. They had underestimated the strength of these people. She fired toward Zhang, signaling her people to retreat. She recognized Zhang, the person she had seen in the car earlier. Grabbing a man, she used him as a shield while attempting to escape. Zhang noticed how quickly Xin reacted and wondered if she was also an evolver. She threw the man toward Zhang and was about to flee. Li aimed at her and shot at her leg, intending to bring her down, but she fell near the car. Li missed the shot, and the man quickly emerged to lift her up and ordered the driver to leave the area. Li asked Zhang what they should do if the enemy came back for revenge later. Zhang replied that there wouldn't be any problem. He knew where they were currently. As Zhang and his team gathered together, they celebrated their victory. Zhang asked if there had been any casualties on their side. Someone replied that there had been no deaths, but few were injured. Zhang then ordered the injured to be sent to the medical zone for quick treatment, and the enemy corpses to be moved to cold storage for Chang. He also instructed them to bring in the refugees hiding in the abandoned building since it was safe now. He was pleased, as this wave had earned him 76 points, which he planned to spend that night. Meanwhile, Xin was taken to a place where she could talk, supported by 2 men. There were a few other men present, along with their leader, and they questioned what had happened to her. She told them they were too careless and hadn't expected the heavy weapons. As the man stared at Xin, she shouted, asking what he was looking at and demanding some human meat. They were all still standing there, and she asked why they hadn't left yet. The man asked why she still had such an attitude, even after such a failure. She wondered if they were rebelling against her. She ordered her 2 men to attack, but both stepped back. The leader spoke, explaining that Xin was injured and that number 2 was dead, leaving the strongest man in charge. Moreover, the brothers had endured enough from her all this time. The man even challenged her, asking if she wanted to ask them whether he was right or wrong. This infuriated Xin, and she wondered if they were all rebelling against her, thinking she couldn't handle it because of it. They began to surround her, and the man prepared to attack. The people began beating Xin to death. A man approached the leader, calling him the 3rd leader. The leader, angered by the title, demanded to know why he was addressed that way. The man immediately knelt before him, asking for forgiveness. The leader, still furious, dismissed the matter, saying it was all financial anyway, and the man could say whatever he wanted. The man explained that they had suffered significant losses due to the battle and questioned what would happen if they encountered Zhang. The leader paused, then suggested they could join forces with those from Shigang. Meanwhile, Zhang, along with Shi and Li, arrived at Xin's base. Shi remarked that it was truly a stronghold. Zhang told them to approach quietly and meet inside. As they moved forward, they found Xin's corpse, but Zhang wasn't surprised. Shi then mentioned that the giant man they had encountered was completely different from Chang. Li agreed, adding that he had heard them shouting about something like revolver. Zhang explained that by consuming people, they could gain abilities, much like powerful zombies. Li wondered aloud if, in order to survive the apocalypse, they would have to resort to eating people. Zhang reassured him, saying not to worry, eating people was the most direct method, but it wasn't the only one. He then revealed a red object and began to explain how it worked, discussing how zombies and other mutants function and how the process affected them. After explaining, Lee asked, "So, in other words, does that mean the zombies also contain the exotic energy, and they could directly consume zombie flesh?" She was shocked and refused to eat anything like that. Jang clarified that, generally, people couldn't eat zombie flesh because it would make them susceptible to infection. Only mutants could grow stronger by devouring other demons. At that moment, the system window notified Jang that he had completed the mission. He felt that even if there were other people around, they would pose a threat. Suddenly, an attack came at him, but using his dagger, he quickly killed the attacker, noting that they had tried to sneak up on him. He heard the body of the zombie hit the ground and found the same red object inside it. Jang felt it was time to hunt, as Jang handed a piece of the flesh to Lee and Chi. Chi refused to take it. Lee accepted and ate both pieces, finding them surprisingly satisfying. Still, Jang warned him not to consume too much. They continued onward. The scene then shifted to the Shifeng Steel Factory, where the man who killed Shin arrived. A guard stopped him, asking who he was. The man introduced himself as the third master of the coal factory. The guard told him to wait as he would inform the boss. After a while, the man entered and met the boss, who asked about the third master's unexpected visit. The third master hesitated but eventually said, "They were attacked, and to protect us, the second master and Shin died." The boss instructed his people to take the third master and his group to a safe house. As he glanced at the woman beside him, she mentioned that she was thinking the same thing. Once inside the room, one of the men told the third master that he had a bad feeling about this. He pointed out the iron bars and heavy doors, which made the place feel more like a prison than a safe house. A man soon arrived and opened the door, motioning for them to come outside. As they stepped out, they found themselves surrounded by a group of people. The third master frowned and asked what was going on. The woman beside him wondered if the man had tried to gain access for some hidden reason. The third master, confused, demanded an explanation, insisting that there must be some kind of misunderstanding. She asked Chang to let the third master die, but only after understanding why. Chang explained that he had gone to the coal plant and discovered Sin's body, but the second boss was missing. There were signs of a battle, and it turned out that the third master had killed them. The third master shouted that they were merely guessing. The boss laughed and said that if he truly wants evidence in such a world, it's all just speculation. In reality, they had only allowed them to live because of the second boss and Sin's abilities. He then ordered that everyone, including the third master, be killed. A boy begged for mercy, claiming he had important information. He revealed the location of a settlement east of the city, which had plenty of supplies. This settlement, he claimed, was responsible for the deaths of the second master and Sin. The boy assured them he could lead them there. When the lady inquired about the strength of the people there, the boy explained that they were untrained and didn't know how to become evolvers. He hadn't seen any evolvers from that place. The boss asked how these people managed to defeat them if they lacked evolvers. The boy replied they have heavy weapons. They even took down the second master with a single shot. The lady acknowledged the usefulness of the information but still insisted that they kill everyone. They all begged for mercy, but were killed nonetheless. The boss was eager to eliminate that threat as soon as possible, but the lady stopped him, explaining that they needed to evolve further to ensure their success and counter the heavy weapons. She then ordered scouts to be sent first to confirm whether the settlement truly didn't know how to become evolvers. Meanwhile, Jang was in his room checking the store. He had 126 points. To his delight, he found another level 2 black tech supply box. Excited, he quickly bit down to claim his reward, just as he was interrupted by a knock at the door. When he called for the person to enter, it was Shan, who reported that they had caught a suspicious person. Jang agreed to take a look. Lai and Chi were restraining the man, who kept insisting that he wasn't an enemy and was asking to see their leader. Jang stepped forward and asked if the man was looking for him, questioning how he should address their leader. Jang then extended his hand. The man introduced himself as Shu Axing from the West Wind Steel Mill. Just then, Song arrived, intrigued by the mention of the steel mill. Jang turned to Song for insight. Song explained that West Wind was the largest steel mill in the area, and much like the coal plant in the south, it had become a survivor settlement. Jang wondered how far it was from them. Song replied that it was 3 kilometers beyond the southern coal plant. Jang then asked Axing why he had come. Axing replied that the world had become divided and the survivors had to band together. Jang encouraged him to continue. Axing explained that their leaders had sent them to find survivors and recruit them back to their settlement. Chao handed Jang a map that Axing had secretly made of their establishment. Using his mind's eye, Jang sensed that Axing was lying. Without hesitation, Jang pressed the gun to his head, warning him that they understood how things work in the apocalypse. If Axing didn't tell the truth, he would blow his head off. Axing, visibly nervous, admitted that they were just being cautious and Jiang couldn't fault them for that. Jiang then asked Chia if Axing knew about Chong. Chia denied it, saying that he had never seen Chong before. Jiang decided to let Axing go, even returning the map to him. Axing bowed gratefully and quickly left the room. As he watched Axing rush off, Jiang couldn't help but think about the West Wind Steel Mill. He wondered how many points such a settlement might be worth. The scene shifts to the West Steel Plant 5 months later. 2 men were transporting supplies when one of them mentioned that people had started disappearing again. He wondered if the monster had been reactivated. Ahead of them was a mountain of garbage, and they heard strange sounds coming from it. One man moved closer to investigate, but the second man warned him not to go and suggested they let the guards handle it. Suddenly, a dagger was thrown, narrowly missing the first man. The second man cried out for help, shouting that a monster had killed Chen. The man wondered if it was the tentacle monster. The second man quickly confirmed, saying it had to be the one near the large garbage pit. The man wondered if the monster was attacking without warning. He ordered everyone to hide, and those with evolved escape abilities should follow him. 4 of them made their way to the garbage pit, and the man warned the 3 boys not to engage with the tentacle monster but to escape immediately. They looked around and saw footprints, speculating that the monster had likely caught its prey and run off. They guessed that ever since the other 2 establishments were wiped out, the number of disappearances had been on the rise. Previously, hunting territory had been divided between the 3 settlements, but now it was only theirs. The man began to understand that it wasn't the tentacle monster after all. Shifts to Jiang's fortress, which had expanded greatly. Looking at it, he reflected that he had already survived longer than he had during his first attempt. If things continued like this, rebuilding might not be impossible. It had been a month, and the system mission for the West Steel Plant still hadn't disappeared. Shan and the others returned by car, and Jiang jumped down, asking if anyone had noticed their hunting operation. Chi reassured him, saying, "Don't worry. With our current strength, no one will be able to track them without them noticing." He then turned to the kid, Shuai, asking if he was getting used to it. Shuai responded confidently to "Don't worry," and she doing great. Ning added that Shuai had even taken down a zombie on his own. Jiang praised him and asked him to store the mutant cores. Jiang then noticed a new task, Nemesis of Evil, Volume 3, and wondered if it referred to the people at the West Steel Plant. He decided to talk to Li, who was shocked when Jiang mentioned wanting to infiltrate the West Steel Plant alone, considering how dangerous it was. Song agreed with Li, pointing out that those people had been sending scouts to check on things, and who knew if they had bad intentions. If Jiang got into trouble, they wouldn't be able to back him up. Jiang reassured them, saying to be relaxed. "With my strength, even Chong couldn't hurt me. Besides, the whole point of going was to confirm whether they were friend or foe." He was counting on them all to take care of the fortress and the town nearby. Sheng replied, telling Jiang not to worry about things, but he asked Jiang to be careful, as their settlement couldn't function without him. The scene shifts to the settlement of the antagonistic group. Cheng instructed 2 guards to let him speak with the lady, as he had something important to report. One of the guards mentioned that no one was allowed to enter without the permission of the 2 leaders. Cheng, angered, grabbed the guard by the neck but quickly released him, apologizing. He reminded himself to control his emotions, realizing that it had been happening more frequently in recent months. The guards wondered what was going on, but they knew that just because the boss valued Cheng didn't mean they wouldn't take him down if necessary. Inside, the lady asked if it was Cheng and told him to come in. Cheng entered and explained that he had a different theory about the tentacle monster hunting in their area. The lady asked what kind of theory he had. Cheng replied that after careful examination, he had found the footprints of a woman while the previous victim had been a man. He wondered if he was implying that there was another killer. The lady quickly understood and asked him not to spread that information around. Cheng questioned why, and she explained that one tentacle monster was already causing enough trouble for the people, and she didn't want them to be more afraid of stepping outside. As Cheng was about to argue, she assured him that things wouldn't get worse if they handled it carefully. She then stepped closer to him and asked if he was planning something else. Cheng, embarrassed, apologized, his face turning red as he backed away. He mentioned that he had forgotten to ask about a specific thing. From outside, the lady overheard the mention of the women's footprints and realized they had been careless. She ordered someone to take over the job, commenting that if Cheng was so detail-oriented, he could handle it from now on. The boss, who had been cutting meat, said that he would handle the killing and that she would need to clean up afterward. Jiang made his way toward the steel mill, killing a few goblins along the way. He muttered to himself that they were almost at their destination, but he needed to keep a low profile. To do so, he cut his hair, fashioned a few dust masks for his face, and donned goggles and new clothes. As he approached the gate, a boy stopped him, asking who he was. Jiang responded that he had noticed signs of humans nearby and was relieved to see there were survivors. The boy asked if he was a lone survivor and how he had managed to survive until now. Jiang fabricated a story, saying that his settlement originally had around 10 people, but a zombie horde came and killed the others, and he barely managed to escape. The boy remarked that Jiang seemed to have a lot of strength. Jiang quickly denied it, explaining that he had only survived multiple zombie attacks through luck and by gaining experience in fighting them. He said he would do whatever he could to be useful. The boy looked at him, unsure of his intentions, and then said that if Jiang wanted to join, he would first have to pass a test. Jiang understood that the West Wind Steel Mill was not a kind-hearted place. Just then, Cheng arrived, asking what was going on and who the unfamiliar person was. The boy explained that Jiang was a lone survivor, and he was about to take him somewhere to be searched. Cheng told Jiang to be searched right there, then asked him to hand over all of his weapons before being allowed to enter. Jiang wondered how he knew they wouldn't just search him once he was inside. Cheng replied that people could get ugly in the apocalypse, and while it was natural to be cautious, if Jiang didn't want to hand over his weapons, he could leave. Jiang hesitated for a moment before showing his dagger. Cheng checked him over, and Jiang thought that Cheng seemed to have some moral limits. He appeared to be at least somewhat different from the savages at Biku Villa and the coal plant. Cheng, noticing Jiang only had a dagger, wondered if he was an evolver, surviving in the apocalypse with just that weapon. Jiang smiled slightly and replied that he did feel much stronger than before. Cheng motioned for him to follow, explaining that evolvers were required to report to the boss first. He led Jiang to a reception room, telling him to wait there. As Jiang entered the room, he thought to himself that it looked more like a prison cell than a reception area. The boss soon arrived, apologizing for the wait, and asked Jiang for his name. When Jiang introduced himself, the boss asked if he was really an evolver. Jiang replied that it seemed the man already knew the answer. Without warning, the boss threw an axe at him, but Jiang easily dodged it, realizing the man was testing him. Acting innocent, Jiang asked, "What was that for?" "That's dangerous." The boss smirked and said that it seems he was right that Jiang was an evolver. Jiang, still keeping his calm, asked that if he wasn't so, would he have killed Jiang? The man replied that if Jiang wasn't an evolver, it wouldn't be a loss. He then warned Jiang that only a few people knew the secret, and he didn't want that knowledge spreading. If he found out that more people had learned about it, there would be consequences. Suddenly, the man rushed at Jiang and grabbed his collar, threatening to kill him. Jiang thought it was fortunate that the man only restrained him with his hands. If it had been a blade, he would have fought back. He also considered whether killing the man would prevent him from earning the 80 system points from the mission. As he gripped his dagger, Jiang realized how reflexively he had drawn it. He might have some skills, but the man's strength was far beyond what Jiang had anticipated. For now, he decided to let it slide, especially since the man had allowed him to bring in his weapon. The man released him and told him to follow. He instructed Jiang to wash up, change his clothes, and then bring him to the meeting room. As Jiang was escorted to the meeting room, the boss instructed that the other revolvers be informed about their new member. He introduced the lady as Ling, one of the leaders, and the other two were the settlement officers, Cheng and Bin. Ling told Jiang that she would be in charge of him and asked if there were any concerns. Bin responded that there would be no issues. Ling explained that Jiang was fortunate to have found the strongest settlement in the area, where survival would no longer be a concern. However, if Jiang wanted to live well here, he would need to prove his worth. Jiang replied that he would follow the orders. Bin mentioned that it was the perfect time since it was their turn to patrol outside, and they should get moving. Bin, Jiang, Xing, and another boy set off for the patrol. One of the boys asked Bin if Jiang was assigned to work under him. Bin responded, saying that Jiang already knew everything, so he could only work in their group now. Xing felt that Jiang seemed familiar. Bin told Jiang that Dapeng hadn't shared much about the settlements with him. Jiang explained that he only wanted to keep the evolver secret. Bin replied that in the settlement, only the four of them knew the truth about eating human flesh. He emphasized that their relationships were like family, and if the secret ever got out, it could only be because of Jiang. He made it clear that Jiang had to understand his position and keep quiet. Jiang agreed, wondering if Xing was the same person Qi and the others had caught before. Jiang then asked about the other officer. Bin told him that the man was Li Cheng, an outsider who was exceptionally talented and strong. He warned Jiang that under no circumstances should Li Chang learn the secret, or neither of them would make it past the day. Jiang thought to himself that they must be holding back on resources. Otherwise, Li Chang would surpass the two leaders. Finally, they reached a small settlement with 7 members, which they had been observing for 3 to 4 days. None of the survivors seemed to be evolvers. Jiang asked if they were going to hunt these survivors. Bin replied that they were going to raise them. A boy placed his hand on Jiang's shoulder and told him that as an evolver, Jiang needed to change his mindset quickly and stop being so rigid. They were evolvers now, no longer the same species as ordinary humans, and were at the top of the food chain. Jiang asked if they planned to capture the survivors and raise them in the settlement, only to slaughter them later. Bin confirmed, saying that 5 or 6 of them would do it, and they would deal with it on the spot. Jiang wondered what dealing with them on the spot meant. Bin encouraged him to watch and learn. The survivors were working hard to build their settlement stronger, but the work seemed exhausting. Then, they noticed a large group of zombies approaching. The group prepared to fight, but a few of the survivors had already been attacked by the zombies. Bin and the others observed the situation closely. Jiang realized that this was the great plan that Bin had come up with. Bin replied that their settlement's resources were limited, and they couldn't keep taking in more mouths to feed. Besides, having more than 10 people in advance would create a faction, making management difficult. He then mentioned that now it was their turn. As a zombie charged toward a lady, they quickly slashed it down, staving her. The survivors, stunned, wondered where these people had come from. After dispatching the zombies, Bin introduced them as the evolvers from the West Wind Steel plant. The survivors expressed their gratitude, thanking them for saving their lives. Jiang thought to himself that the group had a strength over 20, which made them roughly on par with Chi's group. Suddenly, he noticed a light on a higher floor of a building behind him and wondered if it was just his imagination. Bin called out to Jiang, urging him to help as the tentacle zombie was charging toward the building.